Good evening. I call to order the administrative meeting of the Bernalillo County Commission for Tuesday, October 29, 2019. We are going to begin tonight's meeting with a silent invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Michelle Peacock.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam County Manager, do we have any additions or changes to tonight's agenda?
Madam Chair, we have no changes or additions.
All right. So we will go on to our first item of business, proclamations. And the first proclamation is for Nurse Practitioners Week. And I'd like to invite Michelle Peacock and Rachel to the podium. And any other guests you have brought with you. And I'm going to read the proclamation and then you are welcome to say a few words. So this is a proclamation signed by all 5 commissioners. And it reads, whereas nurse practitioners serve as trusted frontline healthcare providers for patients in our state, and nurse practitioners are highly skilled practitioners with advanced education and clinical training, building upon their initial registered nurse preparation. And whereas there are more than 270,000 licensed nurse practitioners in the United States and more than 2,000 in New Mexico, providing primary, acute, and specialty care to patients of all ages and walks of life. And whereas, in addition to diagnosing and treating acute and chronic conditions, nurse practitioners focus on health promotion, disease prevention, and health education and counseling, guiding patients to make smarter health and lifestyle choices. And whereas the confidence that patients have in nurse practitioner delivered health care is evidenced by the more than 1 billion annual patient visits made to nurse practitioners across the country. More than 5 decades of research demonstrates the high quality of care provided by nurse practitioners. And whereas better utilization of nurse practitioners through modernized state laws and improved system policies creates better health and a more accessible, efficient, cost-effective, and higher quality healthcare system. And whereas 22 states and the District of Columbia have implemented full practice authority for nurse practitioners, granting patients full and direct access to the outstanding care offered by those healthcare providers. And whereas leading governmental and policy entities, including the National Academy of Medicine, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, National Governors Association, and Federal Trade Commission have taken notice of the benefits of nurse practitioner full practice authority and endorsed such a regulatory model. And whereas Bernalillo County is proud to recognize and honor the service of our nurse practitioners to our state. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim November 10th through 16th, 2019 as National Nurse Practitioner Week in recognition of the countless contributions nurse practitioners have made over the past half-century and will continue to make to the health and well-being of the residents of our state. Done this 29th day of October 2019 in Bernalillo County, state of New Mexico. And as I said, this is signed by all 5 county commissioners. And I want to welcome all of you here and thank you for being here and thank you for the amazing work you do. And if you'll introduce yourself.
So I just wanted to say thank you again to the Bernalillo County Commissioners. This is not the first time you have supported us in this proclamation. Across your state and our wonderful state of New Mexico, my hometown, where I've been my whole life except for those 13 years that I was in the Army, we serve all over, especially mental health nurse practitioners, family nurse practitioners, all across the state, especially in rural areas. Nurse practitioners are more likely and will serve in rural areas more than other providers will, and we enjoy it, and we're blessed to work in the state of New Mexico, which has had full practice authority for 26 years. And we continue to show research that we deliver great health care. We meet all of our health metrics for our patients because we engage with them on a personal level. And we decrease healthcare costs, and no one needs to spend extra money to see a provider. They should see their provider on demand when they want it to help them in the moment. So thank you for supporting us, and we will continue to support you, all nurse practitioners in the state, and of course the New Mexico Nurse Practitioner Council that represents all 2,000 nurse practitioners here in the state. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And before you go, maybe you had others sign up to speak, but can you explain the difference, well, what your training entails to become a nurse practitioner?
So nurse practitioners are either master or doctoral prepared. So initially they have a bachelor's degree in nursing, which is, a bachelor's degree in nursing is no joke, right? Everyone else when you're in a bachelor's degree is enjoying life mostly and doing schoolwork, and nurses are always taking tests. I think there was a study that showed nurses in their bachelor's take more tests than any other bachelor's prepared program. But in your master's degree, which I went to UNM, so at UNM, on average, I personally and master's prepared are 750 to 850 clinical hours in addition to school work. So that's a brick and mortar coming into class and doing your didactics. And so, or you can have a doctoral prepared, which is even more clinical didactics and teaches you the leadership responsibilities. I think sometimes people don't understand that when you are a nurse practitioner, you also, as a provider, you have to be a leader of a team. So you help your registered nurses and your health techs and your PharmD and whomever else is in that social work pact to form a team to provide comprehensive care for your patients. So, and then you have some who are also PhD prepared to be nurse practitioners, but the entry into being a nurse practitioner is a master's.
Well, thank you, and I hope I apologize if I interrupted. Anyone else?
Sometimes we're shy in introducing ourselves, but these are all wonderful nurse practitioners that support the nurse practitioners here in the state, and this is our executive director for the New Mexico Nurse Practitioner Council, Rachel Bevan, and we're lucky that we have such a great program here for the New Mexico Nurse Practitioner Council. We provide 2 conferences every year, one next month in Santa Fe and one in April, and those conferences also pull in nurse practitioners from all of the United States to come here to New Mexico to stay at our conferences and get our CEs. We also provide CEs on opioid management. We're very proactive on opioid management, rules and regulations, helping our nurse practitioners use a pain toolbox so that we don't just use opioid medicine. We use all types of medicine to help our patients who do have chronic pain. We do a lot of education on behavioral health and behavioral health medicine. We specialize, some of our conferences have worked on providers and how they can identify violence in the home or sex trafficking or things like that. So we're always trying to stay aware of what's currently going on in our communities and help the nurse practitioners be aware of that and incorporate that into our practice. And in Santa Fe this year, we're working on a presentation. One of our CEs will be on how providers can, in the moment, address suicide ideation and depression, and then a toolbox of management skills for depression to include behavioral therapy, right, and medication therapy, because nothing is medication driven, right? We should engage our patients to have skills, interpersonal skills, or life skills that they can use to address depression or anxiety, or teach them good health hygiene skills, sleep skills, stress management skills. So these are what we're doing in Santa Fe just next month for Nurse Practitioner Week for our members.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions? Well, I want to say, did we miss a step? Did you state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. For the record, my name is Michelle Peacock. Go ahead.
Rachel Bevan. I'm Sharon Schaff, and I'm actually family nurse practitioner along with adult general acute care nurse practitioner, so I'm dual certified.
Linda Tilka.
And I just want to say I'm always really honored to be able to, oh, I'm sorry, I guess we missed somebody.
I have a loud voice, but I'm Gloria Doherty. I'm an acute care nurse practitioner, and I was the first formally trained acute care nurse practitioner in the state at UNM also.
Wow. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for the work you do. You are such an important part of our continuum of care in this community, so I'm always pleased to recognize you with this proclamation. So thank you for that. And again, thank you. I always want to recognize Michelle because she's one of our very honored Army veterans, served, 3 tours of duty overseas, often on the front lines. So I just want to, again, thank you for your service. And again, to all of you, thank you for all you do to help keep this community healthy and safe. So with that, I'd like to invite you up to receive the proclamation, take a picture if you're willing. All right, next we have an acknowledgement of the Bernalillo County Metropolitan Air Support Unit. Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. And representing the air unit tonight is Lieutenant Dave Lujan from Bernalillo County Fire Department. If you're here, please make your way up. And Lieutenant Huffmeyer from BCSO, Trevor Maschek from UNM. And anybody else from the air unit, if you would like to come up so we can honor you, that would be fantastic. The Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners does hereby acknowledge Metropolitan Air Support Unit. It is an honor to recognize the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office Metro Air Support Unit for nearly 20 years of providing essential airborne public safety services to the community. The Metro Air Support Unit exemplifies the true spirit of collaboration with others in the performance of 3 missions: law enforcement support. The Metro Air Support personnel passionately assist local area law enforcement agencies by providing real-time aerial reconnaissance to provide potentially life-saving information to responding law enforcement ground. The work of the air support team has resulted in hundreds of thousands of calls for service taken and thousands of apprehensions throughout the county and the state of New Mexico. Wildland firefighting. The air support team assists in protecting our forests, bosque, and open space areas by suppressing wildland fires with helicopter water drops. The Metro Air Support Unit has helped to fight dozens of wildland fires throughout the county and the state of New Mexico. Search and rescue. In partnership with the Bernalillo County Fire Department and University of New Mexico Health Sciences, the Metro Air Support personnel provide an essential search and rescue response to the community. The Metro Air Support team of rescue personnel have responded to hundreds of search and rescue requests throughout the county and the state of New Mexico, resulting in many successful life-saving missions. Now, the Metro Air Support Unit is internationally known. The team recently presented at the 2019 International Council for the Alpine Rescue Conference in Zakopane, Poland. This recognition is born out of a relationship between Bernalillo County and the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center. The relationship between the two entities was the result of several tragedies. People were dying after being injured in austere environments, and something needed to change in order to perform rescues. As a result, BCSO provided the helicopters, pilots, hoist operators, and operational management. UNM's health science personnel provide technical mountain rescue expertise to facilitate collaborative training, assessment, and research. The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office Metro Air Support Unit makes our community safer, and we can all rest knowing that these brave men and women are on the job for all of us. And I would personally like to thank you because I know in my district, the foothills, the East Mountains, that you are often called out to perform missions out there. So thank you so much. I'd like for us all to give you a round of applause right now. Thank you. And if you'd like to say a few words, that would be great.
Commissioner Piscotti, all the commissioners, we just want to thank you so much for having us out here tonight. We're absolutely humbled. The men that stand here next to me, we've put in, as it was stated in that statement there, that thousands of hours to make this unit what it is, and a large portion of them are even uncompensated. And again, it's just our absolute drive to make sure that this is a resource that's utilized not only for the Bernalillo County, but for the state of New Mexico, and we have been utilized outside the state. But really, this could not happen without your guys' support, and we thank you so much for that. And even our county manager here, who's always supported us, who's even been out to fly with us, and she's been hoisted as well. So even our former Commissioner Johnson, who was part of this, was a very huge supporter of this as well. So we just want to thank each and every one of you so much for your guys' support and giving us the opportunity to even go to the international level to recognize this organization. So thank you.
Great. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Lieutenant Dave Lujan, and I'm with the Bernalillo County Fire Department. And my understanding is that the sheriff and undersheriff could not be here with us tonight, but they do have a video message that they would like to play, if you're okay with us putting that out.
Yes, absolutely.
So most likely, if you're watching this video, it's because the sheriff and I are in Chicago and we're learning about maybe some innovative ideas that are coming out in law enforcement and some new partnerships that exist out there. Our department, we're also probably likely sharing our experiences out in Chicago with other agencies as far as some of the hard work of our deputies and the partnerships that they form with the community every day. And commissioners, I just want to tell you that before you today are some real heroes of our agency and of the county. And Commissioner Piscotti, thank you for recognizing the relationship between the county, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, Bernalillo County Fire Department, and UNM, and the hard work that they're doing with the search and rescue. You have a number of people who are supporting the search and rescue efforts, especially the helicopter search and rescue efforts, to include the mechanics, the pilots, the deputies, the firefighters, paramedics, even the support personnel with emergency management. And they've all really come together to have a solid relationship. And they have a lot of success that they've had, especially over the last 4 years. We've had about 100, well over 100 search and rescue calls over the past 4 years, and over 30 of those were actual physical extraction of people from austere environments and some perilous situations, and if not life-endangering situations. And so it gives me pride and comfort in knowing that it's our crews, our helicopters that are out there saving lives, and it's really shined a new light on Bernalillo County and the state of New Mexico.
I'd like to thank the County Commission for funding this. The return on these incidents is incredible. We've been able to save many lives. We've been able to save many structures with the fire fighting extension and the program. I'd like to thank the firefighters, all the line officers, all the command staff, past and present, for their efforts. They definitely deserve the recognition, and we will continue to support them in all their efforts.
We consider this a significant page in the history of Bernalillo County and the state of New Mexico as search and rescue efforts go. And thank you to UNM, and be safe, and we'll see you soon.
Would anyone else like to say anything? Okay. Any comments or questions? Do you want to come up here and?
Well, we'd love to have you join us for a photograph and to receive this proclamation, so please come up.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, we need 2 rows.
We all came in the same car.
Okay. Who can I not see? I can't see Commissioner O'Malley. She's behind the tall guy. There we go. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Look, these guys just keep shooting too. 3, 2, 1. And one more because there's so many people that are going to have at least 5 with eyes closed. Okay. Good.
All right, we are on now to certificates and awards. Madam County Manager.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's always my honor and privilege to present to you the employees of the quarter for the first quarter for 2019. So as I state your name, if you can come and join me at the podium, please. Fran Martinez Romero. So Fran has been with the county for 16 years. She is currently a Special Projects Coordinator with the Department of Behavioral Health Services. Her primary role includes financial and grant management. She most recently volunteered to manage the Behavioral Health Initiative budget. And we know that that's a lot of work, so we appreciate what you do. She also works behind the scenes to ensure that the clients receive care and services on the MATS campus. She enjoys working with her committed team. They are all dedicated to helping community members who are struggling with substance use disorders and mental health issues. She and husband Rocky have 3 beautiful adult children, Devin, Dante, and Shante. They also have 3 fur babies, Hope, Roscoe, and Kobe. She enjoys traveling with her husband, Rocky, and spending time with her family. So, Fran, congratulations, and thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it. All right. Manuel Garcia, we've known each other for a while, right? So Manuel joined the county in 1998. He was hired into the Youth Services Department, and he is now with Parks and Recreation Open Space. He is the manager of the Los Padillas Community Center He routinely collaborates with the community as well as with 3 APS schools in the South Valley. He also attends the Los Padillas Elementary Community Council meetings. He is always working to ensure that the community center provides the services most needed into the community. He is well known and respected for his gentle and helpful nature and for building strong relationships within the community. He appreciates his wife Eileen and their 4 sons. And you always appreciate everybody. And every time that I see him, he always has a smile on his face, and he's working well with the community. And it's always, his question is how can we help? What can we do? And that's always the way that you've always been. He says they enable him not only to serve the community, this is his family, but to enjoy hunting and fishing too. So congratulations. Thank you. Okay, next we have Edgar Salas. Edgar has been with our IT department for nearly 2 years. He is an IT analyst too for application development. He has become the lead developer on the IT people systems team and supports HR and payroll. A recent example of his dedication in his having volunteered to lead with Empath payroll system and upgrade the project. This was a very complex project for many, many reasons. He extended his experience beyond his job description and became knowledgeable in databases and server hardware. These additional skills were instrumental in the success of the project. He truly enjoys the flexibility to learn new technologies and to integrate them into Bernalillo County. He graduated from UNM in 2017 with a degree in computer science. Go Lobos, yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm just kidding. Ezekiel Padilla. So Ezekiel has been with the county for 14 years. He is the captain with Fire and Rescue. He works on all technical functionality for the fire department. Recently, the department took on an emergency incident reporting system called, what is it called? Oh, Image Trend, okay. Captain Padilla customized it for the department. One benefit is the ability for all apparatus to connect wirelessly to emergency medical equipment. This allows for fast reporting of patient care information to hospitals. He enjoys knowing that his job aids in making the department more efficient so that they can focus on what is most important, providing better services to the residents. He has 4 boys and a wife who are his whole life. Everything he does for them, and he does for all his family. So thank you, and you also do for all the community. Thank you very much for everything you do.
He was just promoted today to division chief, so that's news for everybody.
Woo! Congratulations. And he also has been working with us on the Land Mobile Radio project too, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Eugene Cedillo. So Eugene joined the county's fleet and facility management department in 2013. He is a building maintenance tech too. His team is responsible for maintenance and repair of all the county buildings. Recently, while on light duty, he was assigned the task of organizing FFM project files stored in the basement of Public Works and consolidating them for long-term storage. That was a huge project. He plowed through mountains of boxes and hundreds of documents every day. Due to his efforts, department records from 1982 to 2009 have been reduced by 80%, or 224 file boxes. That's a lot of storage. He was born in Albuquerque, but graduated from Florin High School in California. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and I didn't know that, so serving on the USS Carl Vinson. He loves spending time with his wife, 3 daughters, and 1 son, and congratulations, and thank you for everything you do. Emmanuel Rodriguez. So Emmanuel joined the county in 2018, and we were very fortunate grab him from the state. We stole him a little bit, so right? So in June 2018, he joined us as the Records Management Section Manager, bringing nearly 20 years' experience to Bernalillo County. He came from the state's Record Center and Archives, where he served as the Bureau Chief. Recently, while working with the county's off-site record storage vendor, a discrepancy in the number of boxes being stored was discovered. Emmanuel collaborated with the vendor to identify and resolve the problem immediately. He and his team worked tirelessly to ensure there is a comprehensive, adaptable records management system employing industry best practices and adhering to state law. And I just want to say you have helped tremendously as we prepare to move to Alvarado Square. He is key in making sure that we dispose of our records and we bring what we're supposed to bring and we don't bring what we're not supposed to bring. It's a huge job and we appreciate what you do. So he enjoys making measurable difference for the county by resolving record-related problems and creating solutions that advance the goals of the county. So thank you so much, Emmanuel. We appreciate you. Thanks. Okay, and Lisa Latta is not here, but she joined MDC's Health Services Unit in 2007, and we want to just at least acknowledge her and her hard work. So we miss you tonight, Lisa, but we appreciate everything that you do. So congratulations, you all. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Malley is hiding tonight. I don't know why. There we go. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. One more for backup. 3, 2, 1. Well, I don't.
All right, we're on to 5B, the P&M Business Energy Efficiency Star Award. Welcome. If you would please state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name's Emmanuel Quintana. I'm the P&M account manager, and I manage all the accounts for Bernalillo County and work with a lot of the employees. And my colleague, Sherrick Roanhorse, you all know him, so he probably needs no introduction. Madam Chair and Bernalillo County Commissioners, thank you for allowing my colleague, Sherrick Roanhorse, and I to present this evening. Again, my name is Manuel Quintana, and I'm the P&M account manager, and I work closely with Mary Murnane and other employees of Bernalillo County. Tonight, I want to take a few minutes to congratulate Bernalillo County for its outstanding energy efficiency projects and thank you for your commitment to New Mexico's sustainability energy future. We are pleased to recognize Bernalillo County and its commitment to energy efficiency. The P&M Business Energy Efficiency Star Awards are based on the highest amount of electricity saved for energy efficiency projects completed in 2018. Awards were determined from hundreds of energy efficiency applications across 11 communities that P&M serves. Your outstanding efforts in 2018 to increase the energy efficiency of Bernalillo County through the P&M retrofit program has made you an energy efficiency star for going above and beyond with the energy savings when you completed the HVAC retrofit project at Bernalillo County Detention Center. This project specifically contributed 1 million kilowatt hours of savings, enough energy to power 150 homes a year, and the equivalent of removing 547 metric tons of carbon dioxide from the air and saving 331,000 gallons of water. Since 2007, P&M energy efficiency programs have provided more than $80 million to customers in rebates and helped save almost 3 billion kilowatt hours of electricity, enough to power approximately 470,000 homes for a year. These programs have kept an estimated 2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide out of the air and saved 1 billion gallons of water. Thank you for your participation in the P&M Business Energy Efficiency Program and with your continued support of our efforts to achieve a sustainable energy future for New Mexico. I also look forward to working with the contractor and with the employees of Bernalillo County as you renovate the old Alvarado Square building into your new headquarters. We'll have plenty of monies available for you in terms of your HVAC replacement, your lighting, any other measures that will be more energy efficient. So hopefully we'll be back next year to give you another award. At this time, I'd like to present this trophy to Bernalillo County. Who would like to accept that award?
I think Mary Murnane.
Thank you, Mary.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, I also wanted to just thank you for the partnership that we hold with Bernalillo County. And as we continue to work on reducing carbon and reducing emissions, we stand in support of your Bernalillo County climate stabilization goals and green policy that will be on the agenda tonight. And we look forward to continuing our partnership with the county. And I thank all the commissioners for your efforts in working toward addressing climate change and moving toward carbon reduction. Thank you.
All right, and before we go any further, I want to state for the record that Commissioner Talbert is excused from tonight's meeting. And I also want to offer the following statement regarding the closed litigation meeting that was held Tuesday, October 15th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. Only those items described on the published notice and agenda for the closed meeting held on October 15th, 2019 were discussed at the closed meeting. I move for approval of this statement, and it will become part of the minutes of this meeting. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner O'Malley. Do we need to vote on that? Okay, all in favor. We have a motion and second. Any questions? See none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And the second statement, I move that the Bernalillo County Attorney be authorized to proceed with the matters discussed in the closed meeting held on Tuesday, October 15th, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. within the parameters set by this commission. Do we have a second? A second from Commissioner O'Malley. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. And we are on to communications, and we're going to begin with a presentation from the county's Addiction Treatment Advisory Board, and I want to welcome Dr. Bill Weiss, and I know Anjali Taneja, who's another board member, is going to join us when she can.
Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the activities of the Addiction Treatment Advisory Board. We refer to it by its acronym ATAB. I'm hoping Dr. Taneja, who's on the board, will be able to join me. She's has some clinical responsibilities that she said would make her at least late. To review, this is the mission as restated by the board itself. Its mission is to guide policies, contracts, and programs relating to the management of substance use disorders by assuring that the Bernalillo County Commission, county manager, deputy managers, departments are provided information, analysis, and recommendations on the best available evidence. The overall objective is to promote public safety, public health by using best practices of harm reduction, treatment, supportive services, alternatives to incarceration, and public education. Management of substance use disorders will include consideration of social determinants as well as biological, medical, and behavioral dimensions. It's further recognized that the complexity and chronicity of these disorders requires long-term follow-up. The individual's goal is remission or recovery. I emphasize all of that to make a point that this is a very complex disorder requiring a spectrum of interventions, and that our standards, and we have worked to create a standard for care, is set at a level to achieve results. We recognize that it's difficult to achieve that standard given the vagaries of funding and history. Again, the purpose is to unify the mission and methods of service delivery regarding the medical components related to substance use disorder treatment and harm reduction services. The board was initially set up to have 8 medical professionals and addiction specialists qualified to make policy and recommendations and help align the county's programming and methods used for service delivery related to addiction treatment and harm reduction, and to establish consistency and ensure best practices for county administrative programs and services. The ATAB meets now bi-monthly at MATS. Committee action takes place during the interims between the meetings. We have the ability to have special meetings if we need to. Each regular meeting includes a detailed report from the Director of the Department of Behavioral Health Services. This, with minutes and reports and individual meetings, constitute the principal vehicles for input and discussion with the department and relevant agencies such as MDC. The ATAB's priorities have been and are principally focused to date on painkillers and heroin, with and without fentanyl. This obviously will need to be expanded as a priority. Again, to assure effective drug treatment for persons who are incarcerated, and these are the focuses of our priorities, is assuring effective drug treatment for persons who are incarcerated, including pretrial services, and for those who are released from incarceration. This is really the epicenter of the drug problem in our county. It swirls around the issue of people going in and out of the criminal justice system. Obviously, it's much broader than that, but that is the epicenter. If we don't deal with those issues, the job just simply won't get done. Number 2, expansion of informed effective treatment services for substance use disorders, SUD, across the community, starting with opioid use disorder and methamphetamine use disorder. This has included establishing standards for treatment. We have drafted up what we feel is a comprehensive standard for treatment. We did this early in the game, and our goal is to make sure that people who need treatment get treatment, if at all possible, to address that standard. That standard, we feel, is necessary for successful treatment. To the extent that the standards are not met, the ability to successfully treat is significantly degraded. 3, assurance that contractors for the county provide and direct clients with substance use disorder to evidence-based treatments, such as our standard, and/or harm reduction services. 4, assist with the transition of MATS from its current role as a sobering and detox facility to that of a receiving facility with crisis stabilization services that apply evidence-based treatments for substance use disorders, including MAT for opioid use disorder. 5, and this is sort of a sub bar, but and that is advancing the emerging concept of low-threshold Suboxone as a harm reduction strategy for detox, as a bridge to full treatment, and for harm reduction, including assistance for persons who are on the street and otherwise outside the system of regular care. That is something that we think is going to be increasingly important. It's now broadly accepted in the addiction treatment community, and it's a way of getting people across the gap from being identified as having a problem and surviving until they actually get treatment. A particular problem in our environment because of the delay and the lack of treatment capacity. I'm going to focus for a minute on MDC because it's been a major part of our attention. Our focus has been to have maintenance and induction for both methadone and Suboxone available for inmates who have opioid use disorder. Medication-assisted treatment, MAT, using these agonist agents is a major component of a standard of care. Methadone maintenance, as you, I'm sure, remember, run by Recovery Services of New Mexico, has been in place for years. We've been a national leader in that respect, and it is continuing. Methadone induction, this would be for people who come in not on methadone or other MAT. A methadone induction would be starting methadone, getting that treatment started with the idea that they would be discharged on methadone to a opioid treatment center program. This program was actually piloted and started and received a promising start 2 years ago. It's been hobbled, however, by regulatory requirements, for example, from Santa Fe regulatory agencies. And the requirements are really suited for community-based use of methadone. In the environment of incarceration, the environment is radically different, and the standard regulations just simply don't fit. And that's been a problem. And those regulations really need to be adapted. It's not thrown out, adapted. The other issue with that program.
Dr. Weiss, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you be more specific about what those barriers are and what changes are required?
Examples, when a person enters an opioid treatment program, which Recovery Services is in its capacity, extending its capacity to the MDC, among the requirements are a detailed assessment of the person's the subject's clinical needs. Makes sense. That's a very broad assessment and cuts across both medical needs, mental health needs, behavioral needs, and the patterns of their drug use and so forth. And this is a requirement, and that they then get put into supportive services in response to that assessment, in addition to the methadone, which is, of course, a replacement drug. That's very hard to implement in an environment that runs by rigid schedules for security purposes, where people are available in and out in chopped up schedules, and it's very hard to fit that into an upfront assessment protocol that's easy to do in a community setting that doesn't have those interior demands on how an inmate's time is focused. So it's very hard to make that match and do it and get it done within the requirements of the regulations. That that has resulted in a fair amount of discussion. I think in a proper solution of that would be to say, yeah, these are important things to do. Let's figure out how to get it done so that it can get done within that context. That context isn't going to change. It's inherent in the structure and operations of any facility of incarceration, as I understand it. The other issue for recovery services is hiring staff to actually do all of the elements of an induction program. We have a marked shortage of staff across the community, and working in an institution of incarceration is not necessarily a high priority among the meager work pool as it is. There are perhaps more other opportunities that are judged as more attractive. That's been a problem. But I think we made a good whack at it. Excuse me. We made a good whack at it and learned a lot from the time we were able to do this. Thank you very much. And this can be done. There are multiple additional issues. Part of it has to do with a person gets started and then released before the initial phases are completed. Those kinds of issues, the turnover. So there's a considerable fallout of the people who are started on, and then it gets interrupted. So that cuts down on the ultimate pool of beneficiaries substantially. And I think that's the way things are. That'll have to be dealt with, perhaps, by having a broader external system of services. Well, let me move on. The sort of good news is if a person comes through that system with methadone induction and gets released after they're stabilized on induction and released to a facility in the community, which is the intent, if that cycle is completed, their outcomes are comparable to what the community experience of using methadone to users who are using that as a way for MAT and their outcomes. So this is a group that once you get them through all of that and to the end point, they actually stay in treatment at rates which are quite comparable to community experience. So that's good news. Methadone maintenance, methadone induction. What about Suboxone? Suboxone at MDC has been a priority of the ATAB from very early on. Suboxone maintenance. These are people coming in on Suboxone. Think of a diabetic coming in on insulin. They get in, it's a chronic disease, they should continue the Suboxone in the same way that a diabetic should continue insulin. Well, it's not that easy. It's kind of new, and it's been a high priority. Everybody supports it. But it's new, it's innovative. There are an array of issues that have come up dealing with the medical contractor who was originally supposed to do it. It was removed from their contract. Now it's up to the county to figure out how to get that done. Maybe it'll go back, parts of it may go back to the contractor, I don't know. But there are a series of issues that tie back to the original funding streams for methadone and the support of MAT sort of has its own administrative infrastructure, and that's been a challenge. I'm definitely am not the best person to wade through the details of that, but it's of course been disappointing that has not yet started. Now, 3/4 of a year into the new medical contractor and all of that. And the induction of Suboxone, also a priority, to treat untreated opioid use disorder, right now is only a dream. It's still a priority, but it's just not even sort of being seriously talked about until we get the maintenance of Suboxone sort of under our belts. In addition to that, at MDC, we are very much interested in the whole process of release and coming out of MDC. If one has substance use disorder, making sure that's been identified, a plan gets started, person comes into the recovery reentry center, the communication of that situation gets passed along, and steps are taken to make sure that that person gets connected with appropriate support in the community. Navigators assist with those kinds of connections. That's an ambitious charge. It's stumbled in ways, but I think to a large extent it is working. Probably could work better, but I'm optimistic that that will eventually smooth out and will be a major service. It too, though, runs up with the problem of the lack of resources in the community to take these people in follow-up care. That's a major, major barrier. Okay. Well, what is real? I don't know how many of you saw the articles in the newspaper for the last 3 days. Opioid-related deaths have come down in New Mexico and Bernalillo County over the last 2+ years. I could show you those graphs of declining opioid deaths. I could list the various programs that have been erected and underway or getting started. And of course, if I did all that, I'd take credit for the good outcomes. But I can't do that. Data from the prescription drug monitoring program show total prescription for opioid painkillers are trending downward. That's been a broad objective. It seems to be a good thing. The use of multiple doctors for a person to go to increase their ability to have prescription opioids, that is going down, slowly but going down. That seems to be a good thing. Co-prescribing opioid painkillers with benzodiazepines, which is a formula for overdose. Those drugs tend to reinforce each other's bad properties. That co-prescribing is down. These are all good things. But keep in mind that to some extent the use of opioids in the community in an illicit manner, people with opioid use disorders, reflects the fact that these are people who are, to a large extent, untreated. And what are they going to do? What else can they do until they get into treatment, which should reduce, if not eliminate, the need to go into that market? So we sort of see good things happening, but these are, it's kind of unintended consequences, perhaps. Very difficult to get data on that. The distribution and use of Narcan, the opioid overdose reversal drug, have hugely increased in recent years. That's a very good thing. Overdose reversals have climbed, or reports of them have greatly climbed. The data are somewhat murky. The decline in opioid overdose deaths is more likely than offset by the number of Narcan rescues. Total opioid overdose events may be, in fact, rising rather than falling. That said, policies and actions are saving lives. We have ERs. They save lives. Doesn't mean that trauma is decreasing. It could be a lot worse, I guess. Headwinds that I'm feeling in all of this are the increased availability of drugs. Everybody talks about that. Low cost, ease of acquisition in the illicit markets. A perception of safety. This applies to both opioids and methamphetamines, when of course these drugs can be killers. The continuing stigma issues relating to drugs per se, and the people caught up and entangled by addiction. Stigma still pervades and impedes all levels of the intervention enterprise. And I think it underlies many aspects of payment. It underlies the difficulties in developing a workforce. Okay, let's move ahead. It's one thing to describe what a standard of care is. It's another thing to figure out whether it's in fact being implemented. If we're not prescribing Suboxone clearly, or a blocking agent, whatever the treatment is, it's incomplete and not up to a standard. And we have many parts of our system that are not there yet. And one would have to say they are not giving a standard of care. And I'm talking about MDC. I'm talking, we have to look and find out what our contractors are doing. They can say they do it, but are they in fact doing it? And are the people they're dealing with getting those services? So we've got to look at that. We have to start responding to the methamphetamine crisis. As most of you know, that exceeds the injection opioid deaths right now. It's pushed heroin down on the charts. And we want to look at the really much bigger problem in terms of impact, which is alcohol as a addiction drug. And that's, all of these are costing us. Alcohol is actually the gorilla in the room. Is that what we have in rooms these days, gorillas that we don't want? I don't know, I guess so. I've alluded to what I'm calling the megaphone issue. For treating SUD as a chronic disease with many dimensions at scale, we have a long way to go. The community lacks both capacity and infrastructure for follow-up with systems of medical care and social services needed to address the stages of recovery for persons with addiction. Our core medical care structures, in my opinion, the structures and operations, including reimbursement systems and incentives, are not presently matched to accommodate the broad infrastructural requirements of this situation. And just the footnote, while it may have some rough edges in the process, I am really heartened by the fact that that UNM Hospital and the county are trying jointly to sew together the pieces of a system of crisis care and stabilization. That partnering, in my opinion, is critically important if we're really going to move the solutions across the community at scale. So that concludes my written report.
I've got a couple questions. So you mentioned there are 8 seats on this board. Are they currently all filled? On ATAB, do you have a full board, or are there any vacancies?
We have one vacancy. Okay. I would point out that most of the members are physicians who have full-time jobs. We've been challenged in having a quorum at the meetings. And also, I think we are weighted towards opioids. That's been very helpful. You've got other agenda items ahead of us. I would like to see the advisory board increased with more diversity of substance use disorder treatment experience. So we're going to be coming back to you with some suggestions in that regard.
Great. And I should have started by first of all saying thank you to you and the other board members, because as you pointed out, you do all have other jobs. You bring a level of expertise that I think is unmatched anywhere. And so I want to start by recognizing that. And I think the county has the intention of creating this board was to draw on your expertise to guide county operations. And what we're doing on this topic.
Thank you. One minor correction. One of us is otherwise unemployed.
Well, well-deserved retirement, I would say. So you mentioned of your priorities, establishing standards for treatment. Would you say in our county operations that we are meeting the established standards?
No. I think until we get methadone induction, until we get Suboxone in the jails, we're not operating at a standard. I think the goal in the transformation at MATS is moving toward using Suboxone. It'll begin with Suboxone for detox, and then use social levels of social intervention rather than medical intervention as a starter. I am told that the trajectory of that plan is to get to ultimately to a medical detox, which means you're dealing with supervised administration of MAT, and with the idea of continuing it in the people coming out, going into treatment.
So I want to follow up on that because I know that you and Dr. Trigg have been talking with us for years, 5 years now probably, about medication-assisted treatment at MATS. Would you say we're moving, what's the schedule for actually meeting that goal?
Well,
whether it be Suboxone or methadone?
It has the elements of using Suboxone for breaking the pain of detox. So that's the initiation phase. And right now, that'll probably start very soon. And then as staffing gets up, as various licensing requirements are met, and coverage of staffing around the clock, ability to distribute medications, as that begins to fall into place, we'll be able to move toward a more medical model of treating this disease. And that is the stated plan. The timeline has always been a shifting set of goalposts. There's one delay after another, or perhaps one. Maybe they just want to get me out of the room by telling me, oh, it's going to be soon.
And I'd like to follow up to the county managers. So I know that part of the conversation or the negotiations with our MDC medical provider was to provide at least Suboxone maintenance. And I understand that the county continues to move in that direction. What is the status of that conversation?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I was just talking to Ken, our county attorney, and I know that Lisa Cedillo-White has been having conversations with our chief about that and the medical provider. Do you, Margarita? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, County Commissioners, there are a couple of components. To our knowledge, the current Centurion is currently providing Suboxone for pregnant women. So they are doing maintenance for a very small population, but as discussed through ATAB, the pregnant women component is our most acute level of clientele needing that level of response. As was mentioned, it is outlined in their existing contract that they have the ability to provide Suboxone, but there is not a funding component associated with that. And so we're beginning to navigate how we can identify funding for that. We are also working with the state to expand their existing agreement with Recovery Services of New Mexico from just methadone to expand that language to identify MAT so that it's not prohibitive as Suboxone maintenance in the jail through the existing agreement between the county, or I'm sorry, the state and Recovery Services for the delivery of Suboxone. And so with Lisa Cedillo-White and others, we're trying to navigate the best way to move forward and progress towards Suboxone maintenance in the jail first as a pilot prior to progressing towards Suboxone induction.
Great. So I know, I think this is thanks to the ATAB. There's a new screening tool at MDC that should identify individuals who are coming in who are already in a community-based Suboxone program. Do you have some sense of what the need is? How many individuals would be on Suboxone maintenance in our facility?
I do have a sense, although I've forgotten the number. People have looked at that. It's not a huge number, but there is a steady stream of people who do come in. It's not a large stream, as you might imagine. These people are not clearly tied in. Many of them are not tied into any medical system on the outside, let alone one that's giving Suboxone. Do you know that? Okay.
Madam Chair, as of request from the state, we've actually requested those, a recent update of those numbers, and we were told that the Centurion will have those to us by Friday of this week. So we can report that out to you as soon as we get that accurate count.
All right. And as far as funding goes, funding for this type of program could be provided out of the Behavioral Health Initiative. I mean, out of that tax was passed for expansion of services. What are the obstacles to that?
Madam Chair, there's not an innate obstacle at the moment. I think what we're trying to do is explore all options. In full transparency, I think this is an absolutely a great opportunity for a provider to also look at the current RFP that we have posted for an expansion of services, to also navigate that as an avenue. But again, we're working to identify if there is a capacity for us to do that with existing funds from the state as an avenue to be able to utilize the BHI funds in other ways. But again, the Behavioral Health Initiative is absolutely receptive to continuing this discussion for those, dedicating those specific tax dollars.
Great, and I really do appreciate that. I think doing it sooner rather than later is probably a good idea. Particularly this issue of Suboxone maintenance, as Dr. Weiss has pointed out, I don't know that we are in good standing by denying individuals the medication that they've been receiving in the community. So again, I think there's been litigation in other states I think we would probably prefer to avoid. And so again, perhaps if we could have some kind of a deadline for figuring this out, I think that would be really important as far as our county obligations.
Other questions?
Commissioner O'Malley.
I just do. Is this I guess it's all relative. Is it an expensive treatment, and is there an issue of availability of Suboxone?
Suboxone is an expensive drug, and it's taken daily. So there are lots of drugs that are expensive. This is among them, and if it's new, it means an additional expense above or into whatever budget is set up for.
Has there ever been a question of availability in terms of no?
I don't think that's the prime issue.
That's never been an issue. Thank you.
Commissioner Quezada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Suboxone is mainly used to treat opiate addiction?
That is correct.
Okay. So and I don't know how long this is going to take, but, there's a court case against the opiate companies, and I think we could probably, most likely know that something is going to come down the line. I don't know what it is, but I think they have a pretty strong case against the opiate companies, but I'm not one to speak on that. All I would like to say is that, maybe we could leverage some of those funds as they come back to recoup some of that, to maintain, and again, that's fantasy land, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there for us not to let that be off of our radar, that money hopefully eventually will come. Again, I don't know when and where, as we know, law cases and court cases can take years and years, but I think that's something that we can leverage moving into the future, knowing that some kind of money could come back to us to make sure that we're providing this to individuals who need it. So thank you so much, Madam Chair.
All right, I think those are my questions, but I would like to just urge county staff to give us some kind of a time frame for resolving this question. And I do understand the idea of going to the state first. I think that makes sense, but we do have behavioral health dollars available for expansions of this nature. And I think, as you said, it could come through this new RFP, but it's also something that the county could fund directly, correct? Okay, so I think I'm asking for myself. I hope I speak for the commission that we would really like something that gives us an idea of when this conversation can be concluded, because I know it goes back more than a year in those conversations with medical providers. So I feel it's about time to have some kind of resolution. All right, are there any other questions or comments? Again, I want to thank you, Dr. Weiss, and all of your colleagues on this board for your service. I know it's
Thank you for the opportunity.
big obligation. Thank you. All right, we are now on public comment. How many people do we have signed up, Julie?
We have 10 signed up.
All right, I just want to restate our policy on public comment. Everyone has 2 minutes to speak. A bell will sound once 90 seconds has elapsed, giving you 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. Julie will call the name, so when you hear your name, please come to the front and be ready to speak.
Don Schrader, Jim McKenzie, Geraldine Amato, Gail Donaldson.
Don Schrader. I strongly support probation with supervised treatment for 22-year-old Nehemiah Griego. His main therapist at juvenile detention said he was the best behaved resident in treatment. He has taken responsibility for his murder of his parents and 3 siblings. I compliment his Uncle Eric, his Aunt Regina, for not giving up on Nehemiah. My family had serious problems, but if I had suffered severe abuse as Nehemiah did, might I have exploded in evil rage? If my dad had often beaten me at least once to unconsciousness with possible brain injury, if my mother had told me, "I wish we lived in biblical times so I could stone you to death," if I had been forbidden to have friends outside of church, if our home had had guns, if my dad had taught me to be tough and had glorified being a soldier, if my dad had made me patrol our high-walled compound several hours a day, might I have felt hopelessly trapped and murdered my family? Were Nehemiah's dad and mother also severely abused by their parents? Nehemiah at 15 read at 3rd grade level. Since his arrest, he has completed high school, taken some college courses, reads a lot. He wants someday to help other abused kids heal. We all are more than the worst thing we ever did. With much help, we can turn from evil, we can change. Treatment for Nehemiah Griego, not prison.
Geraldine Amato, Gail Donaldson, Ernie C. Baca, Bob Gore.
Good evening. In 2 minutes, public comment is the only restricted input in these meetings. I can only reference a few things. I was incarcerated in a local hospital for a month recently, and reading some of this literature, I could tell you, for example, they say there's technical support to provide up-to-date info about mental health history. And what's written in the medical record by medical staff is written with no consultation and no consent of the client or the patient. In my recent hospital record, which I went out of my way to review the first 40-some-odd pages of, I found that people on staff who were afraid I was going to report what I noticed in drug use and drug dealing and drug stealing in the hospital to authorities, so they went out of their way to defame me in my record to cover for themselves. Now, one of those people, I didn't know their names until I read the record, but one of those people I recognized is not a malevolent person. He was a man that was disturbed by what he was experiencing and observing in that hospital, and he resorted to drug use to kill that pain while he maintained his job. So many people in this restricted economy are worried about their jobs and their livelihoods more than anything else, and they're willing to compromise their ethics and their morals to do that. I had openly voiced concern about my observation that people were participating in stealing drugs from patients. Now, one physician's assistant told me that pain medication can keep your body just properly administered at an even enough keel so it can fight infection. But if you steal patients' drugs before they run out totally, you may cause the demise of those patients. And I submit to you that is going on, and that is bothering the consciences of some, and then they resort to drug use to deaden their conscience. But there are saints in these hospitals. I didn't know there were any saints in Albuquerque. They're in these hospitals, and they are countering the scoundrels' destructive devastation, but they don't run the outfit. And unless the good people intervene, those people are suffering that try to resist, but they're not accomplishing salvation for all people that need to be saved from those who are scoundrels. God only knows what's going to happen to us. We are on a downhill grade. We are in a decadent status as a nation. And unless the good people rally their courage and make a stand for what's right, and they know, the good people know what's right, but they're not speaking up. We're going to let our jobs control.
Thank you, Ms. D'Amato. The time is up.
Yeah, that's why you
Thank
get 2 minutes for public comment here.
You are always welcome
But
to
some
submit
people
additional You're always welcome to submit additional comments in writing. Thank you, Julie. Who's next?
Ernie C. DeBaca, Bob Gore, Catherine Sedlek, Stephanie Welch.
Good evening. My name is Ernie C. DeBaca. I'm with the Spinal Chamber, and really this was my comments having to do with item 10 on tonight's agenda, but I might as well say it now. We'd like to thank the Commission for adopting some of the amendments to the PTO ordinance that was passed back in August that would make it easier for small businesses to comply. We are concerned, however, about the amendment that was passed recently to begin implementation of the ordinance in January 2020 rather than July 2020. As it stands, there are only 37 business days until January, and the holidays are their peak business season. Does the county have a plan and resources to inform and train the affected businesses in this small time frame, as well as the ability to enforce? Likewise, do these small businesses have the time during their peak season to give adequate attention to understanding how to comply with this ordinance? We are concerned that the approximately 1,000 businesses will not be prepared and could be subject to penalties affecting their ongoing operations. Therefore, we urge the Commission to postpone the implementation to the original July 1st, 2020 date. And we would like to work with the county as a resource in informing and training affected businesses about this ordinance. We have the facility, the bilingual staff, the organization, the ability to assist the county in their outreach. An outreach effort like this would require subject matter experts for training and a robust media campaign, including mail, billboards, and social media. The Hispano Chamber is well positioned for such an outreach campaign. As a community of approximately 1,000 business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals committed to scaling small businesses and empowering individuals through economic growth and wealth creation. So we're here to support that. Thanks.
Catherine Sedlacek, Stephanie Welch, Andre Miller, Chad Gunter.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Bob Gore. As far as the paid time off ordinance, Commissioner Quesada, I wish you had had the time to take to go out and reach out to your business community the way Commissioner Piscotti and I did prior to the passing of the ordinance. You probably would have been sleeping better at night knowing that you voted against it, and the small businesses in your district would have not been suffering from that. And now they, with the implementation of moving back the time for that to start to January 1st, just puts the hurt on those businesses even more. Vice Chair O'Malley and Chair Stebbins, all I got to say is I don't know what would motivate somebody with no dog in the fight to introduce such a bill in the first place, or an ordinance. But that's water under the bridge anyways. Commissioner Talbert, wherever you are, I feel for you. Commissioner Piscotti, I applaud you for having gotten out and found the heartbeat of the East Mountain community and voted against that ordinance. Now that you're going to introduce a motion to rescind the changing of the dates, that will really help the community as well, because so many, especially like, for example, Sandia Peak Ski Area, this is going to hit them right in the middle of their season where they've got probably 90 to 95% of their employees either being part-time or seasonal. So at least if you could get that rescinded, that would be help to the East Mountain business community and the South Valley business community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners, for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Catherine Sedlacek, and I've been a resident of this county for the past 50 years, currently living in Commissioner Piscotti's district on the west side of the mountains. First, I want to thank you. I have two things to say. First, I want to thank you for your vote supporting the climate emergency proclamation at the October 15th meeting. Secondly, I want to urge you to back that proclamation up by declaring actions and goals for meeting that emergency. I encourage you to support Commissioner Stebbins' resolution to establish sustainability and reduction of carbon emissions as a Bernalillo County priority. Item 11A on your agenda. I care about climate change for a whole lot of reasons, most of which were enumerated in comments at the prior meeting and which are in your minutes. But I also want to say a lot of those are addressed by the whereas section of the resolution. I've read the resolution. It makes a lot of sense. I don't think it calls for anything drastic or onerous, and is very reasonable, practical, and certainly something that should be done and could be done. The only issue that might come up is funding, and my feeling on that is whatever it costs, it's not going to cost as much now as it's going to cost if you delay taking action on climate. So
Please vote for the sustainability resolution. You've passed the climate emergency proclamation, and to pass that proclamation and not pass this other resolution is like somebody saying my house is on fire and then not calling the fire department. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Stephanie Welch. I'm an attorney with the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty. The center opposes the amendment that is to the paid time off ordinance that's on tonight's agenda. Bernalillo County's working families shouldn't have to continue to wait to get this basic guarantee of a few days of paid time off if they need it to heal or to care for their loved ones. The ordinance, as it is now, is set to go into effect on January 1st. We think January 1st makes sense for several reasons. First, businesses in the unincorporated areas of the county are already on notice that the county minimum wage is going up on January 1st. Many of them are already going to be making adjustments to their payroll schedules. They can also make this adjustment at the same time. Second, businesses won't have to provide paid time off upon January 1st occurring. Employees don't have the right to actually take paid time off for another 90 days after that. So that gives businesses additional time to adjust to having to pay the costs of paid time off. And third, if the amendment is approved for publication tonight, businesses won't know until December 10th, when the final vote is taken, whether come January 1st, they're going to have to provide paid time off to their employees. That creates a lot of uncertainty for everybody. It sounds like bad for small businesses, for all businesses in the county. For the benefit of everyone, they can proceed with certainty if it doesn't get published tonight, and they can know, and they have the next few months to plan. Thank you for your time on this matter.
Andre Miller, Chad Gunter.
Firstly, thank you again for giving me the time to voice my regards on this issue. My name is Andre Miller. I was born and raised here in Albuquerque, and I'm currently attending CNM. This vote is a first step towards a cleaner, more sustainable, more beautiful, and livable Bernalillo County in the context of physical features as well as people. Moreover, it moves us closer to becoming a people of one, a people that has no other that might be looked down upon, a people with one common goal with equal opportunity, which is the pursuit of happiness. This is one step closer, but is not the only step. We still have a whole journey ahead of us. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I ask that you keep your eyes on the finish line, which is zero carbon emissions by 2045, the latest. In order to secure my future of this generation and future ones, I ask that you work cooperatively with other counties, the state and its departments, and the public in order to fulfill our demands, wherein resources and money is more strictly supervised to keep a green Bernalillo in mind. With this in mind, I ask that you vote yes on this green policy. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Chad Gunter, and I'm here to talk about the paid time off ordinance. I've stood here in opposition to a lot of what's come out of here over the past couple months. I understand that a lot of this is now a reality, but I would like to tell you a story from a business owner's perspective. We were hit in January, February, and March with wage increases. Everybody knows that happens. That's okay. In our business, the plastic ban hits us in January. If we take now and add a third, which is the PTO implementing in January, the total cost of that to us, a small business, in the unincorporated part of the county, is close to $75,000. And I can tell you, we don't have it. We are going to have to get creative and try to figure out how to come up with this money that until now, it doesn't exist. And now we're going to have to either raise our prices to the point that we're going to drive away customers, or we're going to have to cut back on staff. I don't want to do either. We need time to implement this slowly. We understand it's a reality, but I don't know where I'm going to get this. It's a pretty scary proposition. The other thing to remember is, business owners are people. We have families. Our well-being should be as important to you guys as the employees. There's many cases, especially in the East Mountain area, where the employees make far more, and especially in our case, way more than the people that operate the business. 4 years next April, I will have gotten nothing besides a gas allowance out of the restaurant that we operate. So it's not like we have this pool of money sitting around to just implement this stuff. When you guys vote on it, that's it. Then it's up to us to implement it, be in compliance, avoid penalties, make sure that we're taking care of our staff. We need your help, and push this back, please.
And that concludes public comment.
All right, we're now on approval of the minutes. I move we approve the minutes of the October 15th, 2019 administrative meeting. We have a second. Any changes? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're now on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, may I have resolution numbers for the items on consent?
Madam Chair, 9E, 1 would be Financial Resolution 2019-89. 9F, 1 would be Financial Resolution 2019-90.
All right, I move we approve the consent agenda. We have a second from Commissioner Quezada. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're now on 10A, County Paid Time Off Ordinance Amendments. Commissioner Piscotti.
Yes, thank you. There's basically, as you heard, what I am proposing, what I'm hoping that I'll get your support on, is to move the implementation date of the paid time off ordinance back to July 1st of next year. And there's many factors that go into this. Number one is my community, my small business owners, and even employees. I do hear you when you say that you might have to cut back on your number of employees, or lay people off, or even close businesses. I mean, this is a reality for small businesses, and implementing this on New Year's Day, after what is now, we are now in the holiday season, it just isn't reasonable. And I am just asking, I'm begging you to vote to move this date back so that business owners can get the training that they need to implement this. When I talk to small business owners, even those people who were in favor of implementing a paid time off ordinance said, that's great, let's do this, but I need the training first. People are literally, keeping records in paper notebooks. They don't know how to really keep track of the paid time off ordinance accrual rates. And to the person who commented here about the 90-day cushion period, I know it was a confusing meeting last time, but that was rescinded last time. That was deleted last time. So there is no 90-day cushion period. Is that correct, legal department? Yes, that is correct. So there is no 90-day cushion anymore. So if this goes into effect January 1st, that's it. Time begins to accrue, and if businesses don't have their systems set up, if the county itself does not have its businesses or its systems set up, this opens the county to lawsuits. It opens businesses to lawsuits. This is a bad deal all around to move that date up to January 1st. And I did talk to county staff. I believe that Enrico Gradi has a presentation on what it would take to implement this. So would you mind speaking to this at this point? Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I don't really have a presentation as such. We'd had a number of discussions from the inception of this about, from the enforcement standpoint, what kind of procedures, applications, timelines, workflows, and so on we would need in place to make sure that if we do have a challenge, if we do have some kind of request from a business owner or an employee, we want to be prepared and have all of the appropriate forms in place so that we can have a very straightforward process towards resolution. There are certain things the county has in place. I know we have a contract with a hearing officer, but my main concern with this and most other things we deal with, usually deal with the zoning hearings and so on, is that we have a really straightforward process so that we can be effective in always reaching compliance, but also in case there is an appeal and it is of a very kind of serious nature, we can have the appropriate kinds of protocols in place so that if it does reach the board for some kind of hearing action, we'll be prepared for that. So those are the kinds of discussions we've had. Obviously, if it moves forward tonight, we can be prepared, but a little bit more time would probably be better, not only to prepare the staff, because the business license, how shall I say this, the business license registration process is not exactly a robust ordinance that the county has in place, and we've placed a lot of enforcement actions on that, scrap tire ordinance, plastic ban, styrofoam ban, SOBO ordinance. There's a number of them that kind of relate to the business license ordinance, and this may be a good time to kind of bolster that so that we have a nice, clear, straightforward process. So that was kind of some of the discussion we've had around this.
And the ordinance spells out the responsibilities of the county as informing people, informing business owners, employers, as well as employees in English and Spanish as to what this ordinance is about, correct? And can that be implemented by January 1st?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Viscotti, we can certainly we will be sending out notices as part of the minimum wage increase in January. We can certainly inform them. My concern was more when it's in place, how do we deal with challenges? How do we deal with some of if we do appeals or we do have some challenges, we do have requests from the community. I want to make sure we have the proper forms in place, we have the proper protocols in place, and once we start down a particular timeline, I just wanted to make sure that we're able to proceed with it in a very methodical manner, much like you see if you get a zoning appeal or something like that with a very good record. We want to have, permits in place. We want to be able to have tracking numbers in place and so on. So that's my major concern. I mean, we can certainly inform, but my real concern is making sure that we're prepared to deal with any challenges.
Okay. Can you explain to people, to business owners and employees in both English and Spanish, the contradictions in this ordinance, that dates don't match up, that attorneys in this room are not even aware of what's been happening with this ordinance, and that certain parts have been deleted and certain parts are added? Can you explain that in English and Spanish to both employers and employees by January 1st?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Viscotti, we do our best within our department to have bilingual staff on board to explain many technical things. We can certainly get there, but I think that it would be really a good thing for us to be able to rehearse and have those forms created so that if we don't have to explain, we can be explaining from a document that we've vetted and has been kind of duly processed, and we feel that the language is appropriate and straightforward. So, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do. It's always better to have, especially with the rollout of a new ordinance, it's better to have kind of the most comprehensive evaluation and adoption of a process that we can work with. So, the English-Spanish is always a challenge. We do our best to recruit staff that can do that, but as it gets more technical, it becomes a little bit more challenging to interpret.
Okay.
Commissioner Quezada.
I don't have any questions for you. I think that's pretty obvious from your statement where we're at as a county. And so there's work to do. So look, I've met with every business organization. I've met with businesses in the city, in the county. To say I didn't meet with the businesses was not a true statement. I just want to make sure that people know that. I spent hours and hours and hours going over this. I think that the reason why I'm the one that brought back different things, and I'm the one that brought amendments to this PTO, was because of the conversations I had with many different business owners. And to be honest with you, not all business owners were against it. I have friends, we grew up in poor neighborhoods, and we grew up, and some of us became entertainers, and a lot of us became business owners. I had and sat down with friends of mine who are business owners, very successful business owners. I showed them this ordinance, and they said, I already do that. That's why I have a successful business. I know that not everybody's able to do that. That is one of the reasons why I came back and tried to compromise on many different levels. I think we've spent a lot of time compromising on this, and I don't mind continuing to compromise to get us to the place where we're going to implement something that we should feel confident that it's going to work as best as it can for both sides of this argument. I want to make sure that what we put forward, they'll look at it at the city level, they'll look at it at the state level, and that they implement, because it's coming, whether people know that or not. It's coming through the state and it's coming through the city. They're just looking at what we're doing and the work that we're doing, and I don't think that if you take some time to reconsider and look at how we're going to do it, how it's going to be implemented. I think that's the debate we're having now. I don't think we're really having the debate whether people have earned it. We don't have a debate that it actually does help businesses if they implement it right and if they're able to pull this off. So I think that we do need to have enough time staff-wise in the county to make sure that it's done correctly. And, so I'll be honest with you, I think that, I do have a sense that January is just right around the corner. And I think the business community has compromised in many different ways to move forward with this. They have with me. I don't know if they have with other commissioners, but they've expressed to me that they're comfortable where they're at. And I think that to give them a little more time isn't asking too much. And so at this point, in the spirit of compromise, in the spirit of trying to do this right, I don't have a problem supporting you being able to push this back into July, because starting in July, it's going to start on day one. It's not going to have the 90-day cushion anymore, and because of that, because we got rid of the 90-day cushion, I feel comfortable of pushing the effective date to July, so we can get businesses through the holiday season and that we can give staff enough time to implement this, because I truly believe that 2 years from now, businesses will still be thriving. Nobody will go under. They'll figure it out, and I think they'll retain their employees. They'll have happy employees. I think people will be happy working for who they work for. That's been proven to me over and over and over by many businesses in New Mexico, small and large. So that's my comment, Commissioner, so you do have my support.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. Our legal department had prepared a nice document, and I'd like to call up Hannah Bell right now because she wrote that document, and I'd just like to get this for public record for her to talk about what this implementation would entail.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Piscotti, there's a few things that are required on both the employer's end and on the county's end to get this going. For the employers, there's a record-keeping component that's going to need to begin immediately upon the effective date of the ordinance. There also has to be an instruction by the employer to the employee of the manner in which they can use their paid time off. And finally, they have to provide notice to their employees of their rights. For the county, one of the main things that we have to do is we have to have some system in place to have a report, an annual report, about the paid time off ordinance and how it's working. We also have to have a process in place, as Enrico Gradi mentioned, for investigating and adjudicating any complaints that come in by business owners or the public who are entitled to the benefit. We also have to be prepared for any potential enforcement actions that come from that, and part of that is really just implementing a process to be able to make sure that the ordinance works effectively and that the county can implement it effectively. Part of that is coming up with rules and guidelines, and like Enrico said, just a very streamlined process to make sure that it goes smoothly. And I think that's generally it. You've also mentioned, Commissioner Piscotti, that we have to provide both in Spanish and English, sort of like we see other employment rights published on a poster somewhere for employers to use for their employees.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as was mentioned, so I want to make this very clear, and maybe legal can respond to this. The ordinance that was that was amended prior to amendment, it did say then that the accrual began on July 1st, the very first, the time that it was.
That's correct. I think it's important to note that the amendment was, and let me pull this up so I get it right. That you have two 90-day periods. One is at what point in time do you accrue?
Right.
And the other one is at what point in time are you able to first use it? And your amendment was, Commissioner, Madam Chair, your amendment was to say you should start accruing it immediately upon the effective date.
Right.
So what we would need to do is make those all line up, which we do by just saying you can start accruing July 1st if that's the effective date. Or if you accrue January 1st, then we'd have to move the tiered effective dates to match. So you'd start with January, instead of using a July calendar, 1, 2, 3 years, we'd use a January calendar.
Okay.
But so what you did simply was say, start accruing immediately, but you don't get to use it for the first 90 days. Also, the protection was in there in the negotiation as to a minimum of hours per year before you're entitled to get into the system.
Okay, and that was very important to me, to make sure that the accrual started upon implementation, which was one of the reasons that I moved those amendments forward. But now, as you're saying, we basically have a fix here. We're going to have to fix something right now. Those aren't lining up, and that's an issue. So that's my understanding of, and as I said, the important thing was in terms of accrual, not to wait those 90 days. Obviously, in order to fix it, we would have to open it up anyway. It's important to me, again, that accrual start on time of the implementation. Once you open up an ordinance, of course, you open it up to more amendments. So, FYI, that could be coming up. We were hoping that it was sort of like we were going to take care of it and that was going to be it. But I can see why we have to do that. And as I said, that was the more important thing to me, was just to get that accrual date. And then I guess, it also lines up in July for our fiscal year, so we can start to look at what we can put in the budget for the next fiscal year. So that also makes sense. Thank you.
I want to ask the county attorney a question. So this issue was voted on at the last meeting,
That's correct.
the implementation date. And I understand what Commissioner O'Malley has said about the need to make some corrections, but under Robert's rules or whatever our policies are, if something was voted on in the last meeting, can it be brought up again at the next meeting?
And we kind of visited that on the prior amendments. So once we have an ordinance in effect, then at that point in time, the ordinance is subject to amendment through the regular process. And we're, of course, always erring on the side of as much transparency as possible. So today is publication. So what we're saying is, let's bring back the ordinance and use the full publication of it at 30 days and bring it back for the December meeting for this small amendment. It's a pretty small amendment. I think there's a couple typographical errors and other things that we want to put in there that would end up being in the published ordinance. So giving everybody out there the opportunity to see what we're intending to do.
And I'm 100% in support of transparency here, but I thought under Robert's rules, I mean, this was very clearly voted, what was it, 3-2, 4-1 at the last meeting about what the implementation date would be. I mean, I guess this raises in my mind the question, can this just go on forever? I thought under Robert's rules that if you wanted to, change the vote on something, it had to be proposed by someone who had voted in the affirmative. What is the rule on that?
Yeah, those are great questions, and I think this question is, are we amending an existing ordinance, or are we asking for reconsideration of a vote taken? My understanding is this request is to amend an existing ordinance, which would go through the publication request. The rules that you have for Bernalillo County are pretty interesting in that if you want to reconsider a vote that was taken, then you have to do it in the same meeting. So let's say that at that meeting you had taken that vote, and without having the 30-day publication, somebody could say, having voted in the majority, I'd like to reconsider the vote by which I've taken, and then you could redo it. You guys have done that once before, and then you actually had one vote where you suspended the rules in order to take a vote. That would have been a reconsideration. My understanding is this is not couched in terms of reconsideration. It's couched in terms of bringing the ordinance back by the 30-day publication amendment process and then amending it that way. And I think Commissioner O'Malley is absolutely correct. It's open again, once again, for amendments just like last time.
And I'm just looking through the meeting packet, and there doesn't seem to be a document that says exactly what the proposed amendments are. Can you just state a little bit more clearly? I mean, we've got the first ordinance that was passed, the one that was amended and passed at the October 15th meeting, and it's just not really clear to me what the proposed amendments are.
My understanding is the proposed amendment right now that is being proffered by Commissioner Piscotti is just to amend back the effective date as being July 1st of 2020. There are some typographical amendments that Julianne is prepared to just let you know what those would be. Those would appear on the publication as we move forward. There was another amendment prepared, which is also subject to the will of the commission, that instead of moving it back, would just say, okay, if it's going to be January 1st, then let's realign the tiers so that they would be implemented on January dates 3 times instead of on July dates. But I think the only amendment now I understand currently discussed is the one just to take everything to the July 1st, 2020.
Okay, and that would be at the end of the ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay. And I guess I have a question about, people keep saying that we've lost the 90-day cushion. What does that mean?
You haven't. People still have to wait 90 days before they make a request for it. What you did was you just said you could start accruing immediately upon the effective date of it or the date of employment. And that's, I think it's a good compromise. In other words, there used to be you couldn't accrue for 90 days and then you couldn't make an application for 90 days. This just says you can accrue on the implementation date for everybody starting July 1st if you so choose. Well, let's say somebody is hired on August 1st. Well, then they would accrue for 90 days based upon that hire date.
Okay, and there still is the 90-day, the maximum 90-day delay in benefit. That has stayed, that's been consistent throughout
that is
each
correct.
of the versions. Okay. And you may not have this version. It seems to me that this ordinance is originally introduced, and I think even the second iteration when it went from paid sick leave to paid time off, the implementation date I think was February or March.
I don't quite remember this, but I think you're right. This ordinance has been in the works now. We're getting close to a year on it. because if you remember, it was first published, I think, the beginning of May, end of February. So you have taken a great deal of care and time to make sure you're getting it right. And I agree with Commissioner Quesada. I think this is kind of becoming a model ordinance for other governments, and it's a leadership role, but we've taken your input, you took input from everybody on it. So some of the amendments, like the 90-day accruals, those are amendments you took in from it. And it changed from sick leave ordinance to paid time off. So a tremendous amount of work, and I think you're right. There was this question about what the implementation date would be, and there was I think the idea to push it back to July just to give a few more months' time. And I think you're right. It was late winter.
All right, are there any other questions, comments? Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. You know, Enrico, I heard you say that it's possible, and I know with you, it always is, that you're a hard worker, and if it has to happen, it'll happen. But I think out of respect for our staff, out of respect for, you know, the business owners and, you know, just kind of everybody in general, it just makes sense to push this back to July 1st. Heading into the holiday season and, you know, just having a couple of months to do this, that's a lot of pressure on people. So I would ask that you take that into account and support pushing this back. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you. I just want to just talk a little, a few comments here. I mean, the individual who spoke earlier and, basically made the point that I didn't have any, dog in this fight. And I do. I have areas, of course, that are unincorporated as well. I have businesses I represent. But I represent people in this community who are working. And we have a growing population of working poor. And I think we all need to pool together to figure out how we can support those people. And so that's one of the reasons I'm supporting this ordinance in the first place. So that's my dog in this fight, if you will. And the other thing is, I do have respect for staff, and which is why I'm considering, this ordinance. And I understand, and have for the last several years, understand that there are time constraints. I think I'm being reasonable about it. So just want to make that statement that I am being reasonable and understand the importance of allowing staff. The other thing I would say is that it would be good to probably, I don't know if it's the next time, but really get a sense of what it would require to implement something like this in terms of maybe part-time or full-time employees, so that when we look at our budget, that we make sure that that it's successful, that we have enough resources to carry out this ordinance and make sure that it's successful. I'm not sure when we would get that, but that's something that I think is going to be important to put together before things go too far along. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind. So I want to follow up on Commissioner O'Malley's just comments. Again, people continue to say, well, why would Commissioner Hart-Stebbins have anything to do with this? Surprisingly, I do have some unincorporated area. I have an industrial area in my district where there are a number of employers. So number one, I think it was Commissioner Quesada who counted them up, 5 businesses that are in fact affected. But I also represent some parts of the county that have some of the lowest wage earners in the entire state. And so when I think about serving my constituents, business owners and employees alike, that is certainly a consideration. I have just recently been through a situation of having a lot of contact with people in the healthcare industry. And I realize that many of the people who are taking care of our loved ones, people who are taking care of people who are in rehab, who need home care assistance, those people make minimum wage. And those people are the ones that we want to be able to take a day off. And I can speak from experience. I don't want people who are ill, who are coming to work because they can't, because they're minimum wage earners, they can't take a day off because they can't afford it, coming in coughing, sneezing, whatever, on my loved ones. And I think that all of us, there were a number of employers in that healthcare sector who came and argued against this ordinance. And I was wondering if like the public was listening to that, because we want those individuals to be able to take a day off to protect public health, not just their own health, but the health of the people that they're taking care of. So yeah, I do have a dog in this fight. I think in some ways it's very personal for me. And the next time somebody thinks about making that comment, I hope you'll just consider my remarks tonight. And that's all I have to say right now. Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. And I just wanted to address you, Commissioner O'Malley. We did talk about this, and I do appreciate, I know that, you know, you do have compassion for people, and when we talked, you took into account, you know, that this would be a hardship for not only the business owners, but for the staff. So I do appreciate that you expressed respect and compassion for those people. Thank you.
We'll need a motion to approve these amendments, this amendment. We have a motion? We have a second from Commissioner Quezada. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we are now...
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Before we, I know that you've already conducted the vote, but we did have some minor cleanup that we should get on the record for this item. I'm not sure necessarily if it requires a vote, just as long as it's on the record and we publish as stated.
Okay, who has those?
I have those.
Changes? If you could please read those into the record.
Okay, so starting on page 4, line 13, sentence "at the time of employment," we include "at the time of employment or the effective date of this law." That is also the same for line 22 on the same page, "at the time of employment or the effective date of this law." On page 6, there's a typographical error on line 25. You'll see the strike through of hiring, so we will be removing that. Last, on page 8, line 3, it states this ordinance amendment prescribed by sections 1 through 8. It should be 1 through 11, as there are 11 sections. So those changes will be added to the published version.
All right, I'll move approval of those additional amendments. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Quezada. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? And I would just ask, as this is published, could there please be some clarity about what the exact amendments are, as opposed to just publishing the revised amendment in its entirety?
That's a great idea, and I think that's what we did last time. And you are right, Madam Chair, you pointed it out perfectly, that it is section 11, the very last paragraph, actually, almost the last line of the ordinance, which says this ordinance shall take effect. It now says January 1st, 2020, and be amended to go back to July 1st, 2020. So we can publish that. Yeah, and so that amendment is published.
It's published as attachment 10A-B, so it's the second attachment for this agenda item.
Okay. Is it necessary to publish the entire ordinance?
Yeah, the ordinance is published currently. What we will do in the publication pursuant to this is make the minor corrections, so that's there. Then you guys have the will with regard to what you'd like to do on that amendment or others. And then we would vote on the ordinance like you did last time, then just encapsulating all the actions taken in the next meeting.
All right. We are now on adoption of resolution. The first item is 11A, the Bernalillo County Climate Stabilization Goals, Green Policy. May I have an administrative resolution number, please?
Madam Chair, 11A, Administrative Resolution Number 2019-91.
All right, and I'm happy to move approval for this, and
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I do want to just clarify my intention behind this resolution. All of us, all 5 of us, did sign the proclamation declaring a climate emergency, and it seems to me that we don't it doesn't really do a whole lot to declare a climate emergency if we're not prepared to do what we can to address it. So that is the intention of this resolution. And I want to start by pointing out, as the resolution, as the final paragraph of this resolution does, that Bernalillo County has been really progressive over the last decade or more in looking at ways to make county operations energy efficient and sustainable. I mean, just tonight we received the award from PNM. I want to thank you for that. Mary Murnane deserves, and our Public Works Department, many people in the county have been responsible for that. I think Mary was named Energy Efficiency Person of the Year. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact title, but I think that shows that Bernalillo County has been committed to this for many years. And I have, a list, working on, starting in 2003, addressing stormwater quality in the NPDES program implementation. We've been very focused on water conservation at all county facilities, using the ARRA funds in 2000 and 2011 for energy efficiency. We use landfill gas from the landfill out on the west side to replace natural gas usage at MDC. We have a recycling program for county facilities. We have a 1 megawatt solar photovoltaic installation at MDC. We have the MDC Energy Efficiency Project, which I think is what was recognized by PNM. We are, I guess, considering participation in a PNM solar power purchase agreement for 1.5 megawatts of solar. And of course, the renovation of Alvarado Square is going to seek LEED certification, which is a commitment to energy efficiency. And I think to add to that, combining our facilities, one of the best ways we can be sustainable is to reduce our square footage. And that is part of the intention, that is the intention of the move to Alvarado. So I want to highlight and congratulate our staff for the work that's already been done. But I think we can do more, and that is the intent of this, is to ask our county staff and all of our county employees to look for ways in which we can continue to become more sustainable and reduce our carbon footprint. And I think that there are lots of ways to do that, and I just want to mention one, our procurement policies. I think we can do more to encourage our vendors to be more thoughtful in the use of fossil fuels. I was recently, again, thanks to Sam Howarth at our Behavioral Health Services Division, spent some time at a local business where they sell office supplies. And the great thing about this business is it's woman-owned, it's in an enterprise zone, but this business employs mostly people with very severe disabilities, pays them minimum wage, and some of these employees have been there for 30 years. Something we probably ought to be encouraging through our procurement code. But also they pointed out how buying local can really make a difference in the carbon footprint in ways that we don't usually think when we buy a package of pens. What has it taken to get those pens to our desk? Or reusable pens. Are these, and that's what this resolution is directed at, is asking county staff to examine all opportunities within our internal county operations for reducing our carbon footprint. I think there is another step. This has been recommended that we take the next step at some point and look at our county policies for development, for ways in which we can govern operations outside of our Bernalillo County operations. But I'm interested in entertaining that, but that is not part of this resolution at this time. So we have a motion. Do we have any questions, comments? Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to recognize, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here that we can, soon, or just look at some things just in terms of the way we operate every day as to how we can really encourage, either using more recycled products or things like that, that as was mentioned, that have a lower footprint, if you will. Someone mentioned earlier, I think, lady here spoke earlier, we need to do something, it's going to be, I don't know if she said it wasn't going to be costly, but she says that, really, does it matter how much it costs? And I think it's important that we know how much stuff costs. And that if we are going to implement a plan, that we take time to do that we identify that. One of the bigger issues is going to be education around this issue, really educating not only our staff, but educating the public and, letting the public know what they can do. We could, of course, lead by example. There's no doubt about it. But again, looking at our policies, I think that's pretty low-hanging fruit, because that's saying, what, people we do business with use public dollars. You should follow those same rules we're following in terms of, reducing, again, I guess that's the only way I can say it, just in terms of, climate change. And I just see that as doing something very simple every day. I mean, we have gotten to the point where we're using so many plastics, we don't even think about it. At one time, they didn't have all the plastic things that we use, but now we seem to think that that's something we absolutely have to do. And of course, there's other alternatives. So things like that. I think really education, doing almost a real strong campaign around this is going to be important. I think it would be a good idea as we start to look at the budget for next year as well, as to what those things do cost. I think it's going to be important. And because, we do have limited resources too. And it would be nice to have that coming up soon so that we know, because managing that would be a reoccurring cost. Probably initially we would look at having someone just look at all our policies, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in-house. It could be someone, from the outside or consulting. But it is a big endeavor to change all that. It's not something that's simple. Again, there's some things that are simple, but really it's a big sea change, and just, we have to be prepared for it. And then if we're telling the folks that we're going to do it, then we need to do it. So we need to carry out what we say we're going to carry out. Thank you.
Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. And I just want to say I agree with both of you. You've made some great points about how we need to be the leaders here. And Madam Chair, from the version last time to this time, I'm so pleased with this. And so I just want to say to you and to the woman in my district, you certainly have my vote on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Casada.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and that was one of the things that, the last time when we talked about it, what's the game plan? What's the tangibles? What could we put our hands on to really make change? So I also like to thank you for going back and doing that and really putting a legitimate plan in place. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and second to approve AR 2019-91. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're now on 11B. Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a resolution just to do a marketing study, and you probably have it's a very short resolution. Just acknowledging that the project that is moving forward, the West Central Route 66 Visitor Center, is essentially a revitalization effort in that area, and that acknowledging, of course, that that's an area that has been historically underserved, those kinds of things, but also knowing that we have a large commitment in public funds. What would be our commitment moving forward in terms of operations? And this center is a little unique. It does have some venues that do require some public investment, and there are some expectations of revenue. So essentially what this does is it says, let's do a market analysis, which is something that most businesses do, and look at the viability to inform moving forward. The county, as the county makes a commitment, will be asked, of course, to make a commitment in operating funds in the future as well for maintenance as well. So I would like to move approval, and then I have an amendment.
Second.
All right, we have a motion second. Commissioner Quesada.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner O'Malley. You know, this has been something that's been in the works for many, many years, and we're finally at a point where I'm very excited to hear about how we're going to move forward. This was a design build, and so I guess for people who are in that industry, they understand that that's something that doesn't normally happen in that sense. You normally do a business plan, a study, and all those sorts of things before you move in that direction. We have, as a community in that area, went for the dollars. As we looked at what the needs of the community, we do a thing called Westfest up there, and it was Think Big at first, and now it's called Westfest. And what we do is it's basically a kind of a fiesta. We have bands and food trucks and everything, but it's disguised as a fiesta, but it's really a kind of a neighborhood meeting. We have people fill out surveys about their needs, what they think is lacking in their community, and many different approaches to get the feedback, not only from the community, but also sitting down with business owners, people who are actually now investing in that area for the first time, the people who are building Define Fitness and the great development on Unser Crossing, and so we got great things coming. And so I'm thanking Commissioner O'Malley for supporting this the way she is and making sure that we have the information that we need from a design build to move forward and make sure that what we do is successful. This is a big project. It has many different elements to it. It's, you know, it's a visitor center, it's a community center, it's a, you know, it's a public-private partnership. It's got a lot of things. That just speaks to the needs in my community, and that we're all trying to tackle everything with one kind of build with the money that we've raised. So I just want to publicly support this and thank Commissioner O'Malley for her work.
And I do have an amendment, and I just wanted to make a couple of clarifying things. So technically, it really isn't a design build. That's when you do an RFP for everything, but it's going to go out for construction. But as you had mentioned earlier, and we've talked about this, Commissioner and I, and also Councilor Pena, who's of course one of the drivers as well, and has been very passionate about it. You know, the importance of doing something like this, but also recognizing that, you know, time is money. And so every time you know, his concern, and this is why I have this amendment, is that, you know, further delays add cost to projects, and you know, he's right about that. But again, we kind of missed a step. So this is basically what this resolution says. And so I'm going to do the amendment. Let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wrote it down. Okay. So this would be on line 7, the sentence that starts with this study. It said this study shall be completed in 60 days and will be made available. So it's just that piece that's going to go inserted in there. And you know, I know that I've talked with staff about the ability to get something done within that time frame, and they're going to work very hard to make that happen. You know, we do have some processes that we have to do, and we'll certainly, you know, we've got very committed staff, and they'll certainly make every effort. If there is some issues in terms of that, let's get back with us so that we can see what those are. But the important thing is to do a good job. This basically is going to be it in terms of marketing, and it would be good to have a comprehensive study. So I would like to move amendment number 1 as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And then,
Do you want to move the bill as amended?
okay.
I move for the bill as amended.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, if we can get
Opposed?
a resolution number first.
Oh, sorry. Madam Clerk, may we have a resolution number, please?
Madam Chair, 11B, resolution number 2019-92.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve AR 2019-92 as amended. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we are now on 11C. May I have an administrative resolution number, please?
Madam Chair, 11C, Administrative Resolution Number 2019-93.
All right, Commissioner Quezada.
So this is something that I'm just bringing forward based on the state of New Mexico. The official language is Spanish, and I just have had this feeling in our community that we've kind of turned away from Spanish and Spanish-speaking people, and I think it's something that we've lost moving forward. And I think as a state, if a state's named New Mexico, that's something that we should be trying to hold on to and not kind of fall in line to lose some of these connection to our culture and our language. And I know it's a very simple thing. It's the Pledge of Allegiance, but even when I sat on the school board, we did the Pledge of Allegiance in English and in Spanish because we knew that was a great that we were something that kids would look up to, saying, well, if they're going to learn Spanish, then I want to learn Spanish. I would like to do that for our community and let them know that we haven't forgot our Spanish-speaking community, but it also kind of maybe kind of show our pride in who we are and how we feel about our language in New Mexico. So I thought I'd just bring this forward. Now, what I want to do, just so everybody up here knows, is that I also don't know it exactly all in Spanish. I kind of mess it up here and there. But at APS, what we did is we put it up on the screen, so it reminds you, and it'll help people learn how to do it. And I'm hoping we're able to do that here also. So I wanted to throw that out there, that you're not on your own to go learn it and then kind of choke when it happens. We'll have it up on the screen so we can read it and learn it. And so that's my resolution. Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of this as well. I was just thinking about my grandfather, who was a state representative before it was when it was a territory of New Mexico, and of course everything was done in Spanish at that time. It's really wonderful to see a lot of his papers. He was a sort of big fish in a little pond. He was the postmaster. He was all these things, but. It's just some of the beautiful writings. He also worked on some of the writings for the posadas in the church, and so I have all those. His first language was Spanish, and my parents, both their first language was Spanish. So it's just, I think, that is part of the history here, and of course Spanish being a beautiful language just on its own. So I'm very supportive of this. Thank you.
Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. I am also very supportive of this. Commissioner Quesada, I think this is something whose time has come. We should have been doing this for a long time. And I love your idea so much that I expanded it. And I would like to, as you were speaking, I was actually revising my amendment to it, because I think that this way we really kind of capture the very, very rich heritage of New Mexico and Bernalillo County. There's 2 land grant communities in my district, and I would also like to give people with, indigenous native languages and, dialects that are hybrids of Spanish and native languages a chance to also participate and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think your timing is impeccable, because if we approve this tonight, the next meeting will be the day after Veterans Day. And I know a lot of our immigrant Spanish-speaking people and Native American people have been in the military, are veterans. I think that this would be perfect. So I'm going to read to you my wording of the last paragraph, which is the action statement. So, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners, the governing body of the County of Bernalillo shall commence every administrative meeting with a silent invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance recited recited in both English and Spanish, encouraging members of the community who are fluent speakers of Spanish or an indigenous native language to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in their language.
Thanks. Madam Chair.
Commissioner O'Malley.
I just think that, that you might add to that, so you just have that sort of like cited in both English and I would say maybe that's what needs to be in there, and encourage members of the. Oh, I don't have "and" in there. No, it says "and Spanish," and recite in both English and Spanish, and encourage members. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Piscotti, could you just repeat the entire amendment, please?
Oh, absolutely. So that last paragraph, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners, the governing body of the County of Bernalillo shall commence every administrative meeting with a silent invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance recited in both English and Spanish, comma, encouraging members of the community who are fluent speakers of Spanish or an indigenous native language to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in their language.
Do you want to move that amendment?
Yeah, I just think that's kind of awkward. I don't think so we're saying, look, we're going to do the invitation, we're going to do it in both English and Spanish, but we also want to encourage people in the community who are fluent speakers in Spanish or indigenous language, I think it's just a run-on. And so that's kind of, I just think we should add that and encourage. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Piscotti.
And I want to commend you, Commissioner Casada. When I first read this, I didn't know how this would go down. And when you explained having it up there for us to read, I appreciate that. I took 3 years of Spanish in high school because I wanted to learn the language. And when I read this, I thought, oh my goodness, I know we learned the Pledge of Allegiance. I have no idea how to recite it. So I Googled it and tried reading it out loud, and I sounded like a very bad high school student reading the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish. So I appreciate having that up on the board.
All right, we still need a motion for the amendment.
So I'll move for the amendment.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second for the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we need a motion for the
So
resolution as
I move
amended.
for approval as amended, AR 2019-93.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve AR 2019-93. All in favor, say aye. Oh, sorry, as amended. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're now on to 11D. Solid waste residential user fees. Madam Clerk, may I have some resolution numbers, please?
Madam Chair. Item 11D, number 2, AR 2019-94. Number 3, FR 2019-95.
Madam Chair, my name is Antonio Jaramillo. I'm the Director of Operations and Maintenance for Bernalillo County Public Works. I have here today Mr. Dwayne Hammer, who's with our solid waste department or section. We're here to explain what what this is for. What it is our service provider, Waste Management, has on an annual basis the ability to increase the cost based off of operating costs, based off of gas increases, and so on and so forth. So what this is just to basically rescind the AR 2018-53 and approve the administrative resolution that's before you today to update the cost. Every year we have a consumer price index increase that currently that we get from them. And so and what it essentially equates to is about an 82-cent increase per month for the typical user. And that's and that basically encompasses everything that the increase in their operating costs. And so and then number 3 there is just basically to increase the budget for solid waste, or for solid waste to administer the contract.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Cazada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the 80-something cents, we're gonna assume that cost to, is that what this other resolution is? Or if that's not the case, how often do they get to do this? Do they do 85 cents this year and the next year and the year after that? Can you answer those questions? Sure. Thanks.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casada, it's done on an annual basis. Based off of the operating costs that Waste Management incurs, per their contract, they're able to increase costs. Generally speaking, in the past, what we've done is we evaluated that. In some cases, we've split the cost of that increase, or we've absorbed the cost. For this one, we're actually asking that cost be put on the residents, the additional 82 cents. I wanted to add also that we do have two other programs, the low income and the very low income. That again, that 82 cents will be reduced. For the low income, it would be reduced to 22 cents increase, and the very low income would be an 11-cent increase per month.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, I move approval of, Mr. County Attorney, do we need to do these separately, or can we do them as one item? Actually, they're two different.
You can do them together since they
All right, I move we approve all the items under 11D. Second? Second from Commissioner Casada. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're now on approvals. 12A, and I would like to move that we concur with the appointment of Enrico Grotti as our Deputy County Manager for Community Services. We have a second? All right, do we have any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. I want to say, excellent choice, County Manager. I think we've already seen the really excellent work that Deputy County Manager Grotti can do. So look forward to working with you in the future. All right, we are now on 12B, the meeting schedule for 2020. Do we have any questions or comments? Julie, just as always, quickly, has this been cleared against different religious holidays, elections?
Yes, absolutely. There's a few proposed meeting changes due to conflicts, but those are detailed in the actual agenda item. I think two major changes, just to avoid conflicts with zoning and Board of Finance in 2020, is we are going to convene, when we need to convene zoning meetings, on the second Tuesday of each month. And Board of Finance will move quarterly to the fourth Tuesday so that we can avoid any conflicts. The other thing as well is we've scheduled, usually Board of Finance are scheduled for 4:30 before a administrative meeting. We move that to 4 o'clock to allow for times when end of fiscal year reporting from the Board of Finance. So that has been two major changes. Everything else is due to holiday conflicts. We've taken into account the 2020 primary election filing date, but everything, of course, will be brought for approval for any changes.
What day is filing date? That's March?
March 2020. I don't have the exact date here, but it is in March. That
Okay,
probably
but it's
would have
not
been
March 17th.
It would have been March 10th, I believe.
So the 17th is when our meeting is scheduled.
Right, so we've adjusted to March, from March 10th to March 17th.
Okay.
So that's.
And then the primary is June 2nd?
Primary is June 9th, I believe.
Okay, then we'd want to stay away from scheduling our meeting on June 9th.
So it might be June 2nd then, because we did take that into consideration.
Okay.
And it's actually, it was not going to be in conflict. I think the only conflict in June was the New Mexico County's 84th Annual Conference, and that's why we moved our meetings to June 9th and June 30th.
Okay, and then Election Day would be November 3rd?
Correct, and that is not in conflict with any of our meetings. The only conflict for that month of November is the Thanksgiving holiday week.
Great. All right. I move approval. We have a second. We have a second from Commissioner Piscotti. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously. We're now on 12C, non-law enforcement mobile crisis team expansion.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the Department of Behavioral Health Services is requesting an expansion of the existing mobile crisis team program to also add 2 additional non-law enforcement teams. This is a model from Alameda County that has been brought to our attention, and we've done some research on a couple of different non-law enforcement models, but we have decided on a non-law enforcement model that partners the Department of Behavioral Health Services with Bernalillo County Fire. This would pair a EMT with a master's level clinician from the existing contracted provider of St. Martin's Hope Works to respond to priority 2 behavioral health calls. At the ABCGC meeting, when this item was discussed, there was some questions around the differentiation between a priority 1 and a priority 2 call. And so to help kind of alleviate some of that confusion, the priority 2 calls are those calls that are continue to require a 911 response, but are not requiring essentially a lights and siren response. The best example is somebody who has suicidal ideation and has immediate access to a means. That is a priority 1 call and response, versus someone who has ideation and maybe thoughts of hurting themselves, but not access to a means or an imminent threat in that moment. So we are excited to work with the Bernalillo County Fire Department on this collaboration, and the County Fire has also reached out to City Fire to see if there's ways to also embed the city in that space as well. There is no increase in funding requests. We have $1 million allocated to the Mobile Crisis Team program, and we have not spent up to that amount. So we're requesting that we add 2 additional non-law enforcement teams under the current funding allocation. We know that the largest piece of information that we have on our mobile crisis teams is that we do not have enough teams. What we've continued to hear as we've requested increases in the law enforcement teams is that it's very difficult to pull officers from their beats in order to dedicate them to the mobile crisis teams. So this is an opportunity to explore a different model to serve a slightly different population, but to work with an existing county resource in County Fire to bring this service to the community. There was also a request from Commissioner Quesada at the ABCGC that we identify ways to expand funding for mobile crisis teams to add additional law enforcement teams in that as well. So we're currently working to explore that with and whether or not that is availability with APD and BCSO.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the challenge still remains, doesn't it not, Ms. Chavez, that we are, one of the difficulties is getting people, in the crisis teams, the workers, the
clinicians.
Yeah, clinicians, thank you. It's not even that late, and I'm starting, it's only 8 o'clock. Clinicians, there is a scarcity of those folks. And then, is there also a problem with the salaries? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, you are absolutely correct. As even Dr. Weiss expressed earlier, there is a shortfall in the behavioral health workforce at a large scale. There is a national shortage, and here in Bernalillo County, here in New Mexico, we see that as well. We believe that that's an additional conversation that we want to work with the local legislators to see about ways that we can incentivize providers to come into Bernalillo County, come into New Mexico, work on reciprocity and other larger avenues in addressing that. The barrier that we have seen is that there is currently a prerequisite in our agreement with St. Martin's that all of our clinicians be independently licensed master's level clinicians. That has posed to be a difficult position to fill. So in this and amending our agreement with St. Martin's Hope Works to add the additional clinicians, it's our intention that these clinicians not have a requirement of independent licensure. They will still need to maintain a licensure, but it will not need to be independently licensed. The reason that we included that provision originally is that only independently licensed clinicians can bill Medicaid. And so it was a way that we could maximize the service. They would bill against Medicaid first and then bill us if it was a non-Medicaid billable client. So now that we know that that has created a barrier, we are working to address that barrier by expanding the criteria. It's my understanding that it's a competitive wage in that arena with the St. Martin's providers, because they are a non-traditional provider in that space, because they're put in a quasi-harm arena, which may have more risk associated with a traditional provider and a traditional model. But again, the largest barrier has been to recruit independently licensed clinicians in this space, and we're hoping that removing that provision will help in that way.
Commissioner Quezada.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So going back to asking for more funding through the behavioral health initiative, I think that, and I don't know if I could do that today. I would really love to do that today. I think two major points were just made. One, we don't have enough people to do this properly to really know the impact that it's going to have on our community. What we do have in place, we know is working. I also agree that it should be done with our fire and emergency people. I think that sometimes when a police officer shows up to a house, you get the opposite response of what we want and what kind of services we're trying to provide. And number two, we need to start paying people so this becomes a good job for them. And I think, and I really believe this, that if they take this job and they're paid well, and the outcomes that they're going to get from doing this work is the reason why they went into this work. I think anybody who goes into this work, they go in not really for the money, but also how am I really going to help people? We know this is really going to affect our community, and they're really going to help people. But on top of that, I'd like for them to, make a good wage and be paid for, the services they provide for the community. We could say that about many jobs, I know, but here I think we have an opportunity to do that. Through that initiative. So if, I don't know what number to throw out there because you do that work, I don't do that work, but I would really like to increase some funding to this initiative today if I could. If we're going to approve that we're going to add 2, it would be great to add some funding and add more than just 2, and then look at what can we pay them to be competitive to make it a feasible job. I don't know if I could do that, but I would like to do that.
Commissioner Piscotti.
Thank you. I just have a question. I just on the clinical side, I trained in Illinois, and when I was in LPC, an LPCC could supervise me and sign off on my notes, and Medicaid would pay. Do we not have something like that here in New Mexico? And is that maybe something that we could work on the state level to make that happen?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, at the current juncture, the statute states that only independently licensed can bill for those specific codes for crisis. But we can do some more research in that, and that may be something we want to advocate at the state level to amend.
Okay, so at the very least, we can look into the possibility of doing that on a state level so that, I keep saying LPCs, but non-independently licensed people could be signed off by supervisors with an independent license and get paid. I'd be happy to work with you on that.
So,
Commissioner O'Malley.
Commissioner Quesada, I just talked briefly with him, and then did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't do that now, but I'd like to work with staff on bringing a proposal to increase funding, because I don't want to just throw a number out and it not be either not realistic or I don't even put a dent in anything. So it doesn't make no sense for me to do it right now, but I just want to put a proposal together and bring it back. So I'm going to support this as is.
Thank you. And I've got a question. So how does this is non-law enforcement crisis response, How does this relate to the community engagement teams?
Madam Chair, the main difference between a non-law enforcement mobile crisis team response and a community engagement teams is that these teams will still respond out of the 911 system. They will still be dispatched by a 911 operator. And since fire is currently in that process, we have that direct arena without having to purchase radios or add additional layers of training to our dispatchers in that capacity. And so this will still maintain a 911 response with a different level of acuity in that capacity. Our community engagement teams, we believe, will play a significant role more with our non-law enforcement team than they have with our law enforcement team, because we expect that the non-law enforcement teams will have a great opportunity to do follow-up on clients as well. So if the team responds today to a client that they're able to stabilize and maintain in the home, if they're back on shift tomorrow and they have the ability to return to that home and check in with that client, it's a great opportunity for that mobile crisis team to then hand that client off to community engagement teams and have that direct relationship. The role of the community engagement teams are to work with clients in the community who are pre or post crisis. So someone who's beginning to escalate but is not requiring a 911 response, or is on the back end. They've experienced a crisis and they're stabilized, but they still need ability to continue in that. As an update, it is our intention to issue a solicitation of vendors. I know that's not the appropriate terminology, it's still an RFP, but we will be recruiting vendors in the space of the behavioral health continuum. Once that is completed, it's our intention to then recruit a new CET provider.
Can you go back a couple of steps? So we appropriated, I forget what the amount, $1 million or something, for community engagement teams. What is the current status?
Madam Chair, that is correct. We appropriated $1 million annually for community engagement teams. That contract was, we issued an RFP, we contracted with a provider, and that contract was terminated about, I want to say, 6 months ago or so. And since then, we reissued an RFP and we received minimal responses to that, and it was not still not meeting the needs of a community engagement team in that space. So we opted to rescind that RFP and are now going through a new process at the recommendation of the procurement department in order to solicit additional vendors from the community at large to then pull from that vendor pool to recruit a CET provider.
So right now, are there any services for people pre-crisis, post-crisis, people who are homeless looking to be connected with services? What's available?
Madam Chair, so we are working with our existing service provision in different arenas to include peer case management, intensive case management, and our lead providers. So it's not uncommon for us to get a request either from commissioners who they're hearing from their constituents, or from the community to say, I know someone in this space who needs help, or how do we connect with them, and we deploy the most appropriate team in that capacity. Our intensive case managers, our lead case managers, and our peer case managers are rounding with our Big Bertha, our mobile unit, to also respond when they do needle pickups and engage with clients. And so we're working to leverage our existing resources to meet that gap in a short period of time until we're able to bring on a formal CET.
So who's on Big Bertha? I mean, when you say they go out to offer needle pickup, but also services, who's on board?
Madam Chair, so that varies. We encourage community members to join us at the needle pickups. We have our staff, Bernalillo County Department of Behavioral Health Services staff, who drives Bertha out. We have case managers on that unit, as well as peers that respond, and then they engage with clients there as well. Our staff also does Narcan training and takes referrals for clients who need either detox service or opiate-based services, or even just homeless services to help connect them in that space.
Okay, and just one last question. Can you just repeat the schedule for restoring CET? You said it would be after that, after the expansion of services or the capacity expansion RFP is done?
So, Madam Chair, as you're aware, we have the $6 million expansion and addressing the gaps in the continuum RFP that's out now. That is open through the end of November. Simultaneously, we are finalizing a request for proposals that is going to look to recruit any and all vendors in the community who can serve a behavioral health need. This is extremely general. It could be for housing services, for crisis services, for community supports or prevention services. Once we receive those, then we can look at our providers who have been pre-approved in that capacity or pre-screened to then ask for mini proposals from within those providers to provide CET.
So kind of like on-call?
It's exactly modeled off of the on-call process.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions.
Madam Chair, if I may, I also have Chief Larry here who can speak to the fire department's role in this.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Deputy Chief Lardy from the Fire Department. So we're excited to work with Behavioral Health Services to expand this really important program that we really appreciate your leadership on developing as a service that we provide to the community. So we're acutely aware of the need for behavioral health services. As you know, or as I'm sure you're well aware, it directly impacts the fire department on a really daily basis. We run about 1,300 calls a year that are directly tied to behavioral health emergencies. And so anything that we can do to support those efforts to get these people the help that they need is valuable to us as an organization.
All right. Thank you. Look forward to this. I move approval. We have a second? Second from Commissioner Piscotti. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are now on 13A, a discussion report, the annual report on open space.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Mari Simbanya. I'm Open Space Supervisor for Parks.
Yeah, we can barely hear you for some reason. I don't know why. Is it the mic?
Oh, closer?
Yes.
Can you hear me there?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Wake up. I will try to be very brief. My name is Mari Simbanya. I'm Open Space Supervisor with Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department. And I just have a very brief presentation. It's at the end of the night. But this is all good. I'm delighted to give you this overview of open space in the last couple of years. We've just celebrated 20 years, which would not have been possible without the community's investment, your support, and countless individuals volunteering, as well as collaborations with partner agencies. So as you probably know, or most of you know, 1998 is when a referendum was passed in the county to provide mill levy funds for the acquisition of open space lands. And then 10 years later, the open space program was formally instituted to provide educational volunteer opportunities to the public. And then very significantly, in 2014, with widespread community support, a 15-year mill levy was passed. And this enabled what we have today, which is to the purchase, acquisition of our properties, as well as expand educational offerings. And in 2018, we have just completed an open space strategic plan process, and this is to propel us forward for the next 10 years. Through the managing of 17 properties, which total about 1,148 acres, open space provides a wide array of venues for individuals, families, and groups to enjoy and learn in. And also, I would like to remind you that the county has had a key role in partnering for the acquisition of 4 other properties, which total 777 acres, including the Valle del Oro National Urban Wildlife Refuge, which you've heard a lot about recently, the Los Ranchos Agri-Nature Center, and 2 properties owned and maintained by the city of Albuquerque and the Tijeras Canyon. There are at least 65 programs and activities delivered every year. This takes quite a bit of effort. Staffing includes 5 programming staff, 1 historic specialist, 2 caretakers, 10 open space land management staff, plus 3 more to address our glyphosate issue. Not only is open space programming and resource management reliant on open space staff and land management, but we also work quite a bit with various departments. All of this work, all this programming we bring with your support to the community is done in partnership with all these different departments. This wide-ranging network is based on positive and reciprocal relationships, but as we learn from our strategic planning process and evaluation of our programming over the years, this necessitates increased staffing and operational resources to assure long-term stability. Per the Open Space Mill Levy Disposition Policy and Resolution, open space funds are divided into acquisition funds and funds for maintaining, programming, and improving the properties. In 2016, the amount for acquisition was set by the Finance Division of the county at about $1.35 million. The remainder goes to operations and management costs and salaries, as you can see in these diagrams. I have both 2017 and 2018. 2018 and 2019. It's getting late, I apologize. The total millage does continue to grow, but as you have recently approved and supported acquisition of properties, so you're familiar with now once we have the properties, we need funds to program the sites. So I have this diagram here that shows projection. This includes the 3 open space land management positions in fiscal year 2020. And you can see we're in the red. And the open space staff also for satellite locations is what you see in the future years in this projection. This was also something that that is outlined in the strategic plan and that we looked at, and that is to expand programming. Across the county, very far-reaching, staff goes all around the county to manage this dynamic network of properties. I'll just glide through our most recent projects per district. So District 1, we have a Bowker easement. This is our first agricultural conservation easement in partnership with Rio Grande Land Trust. And we are supporting approximately 2 acres. This is a new project for us in conservation. And in District 2, we have the Anderson Farms, which we've also heard about. Staff recently received approval to move forward with the acquisition of 147.2 acres of agricultural land for open space. In addition, there are 27 acres expected from the development of a planned residential community.
May I interrupt for just a moment? On this, you have a property named Basalt. Where is that?
At Paradise, Madam Chair, this is the Paradise Community Center parcel. It was called Paradise Community Center parcel, and it was Commissioner Talbot's area. And what happened is we already had property out there, and this was separated from that main parcel, replatted is what we call it, and dedicated to open space.
So it was not a purchase, it was a dedication.
It was a dedication.
Great,
yes,
thank you.
Exactly. And in that case, the Paradise Hills Civic Association is still working with staff to develop interpretive signage. So as you can see, our ongoing work with communities and in neighborhoods is vital. In District 3, UNM North Golf Course, open space, urban forestry canopy and trail enhancement improvements have been completed, as well as the design for streetscape improvements along Yale and Stanford. In all of these projects, we are very fortunate to have dedicated neighbors and community, and I'm glad that I come from a land use background because that helps in working with different community members. An acquisition in 2018, which we refer to as a Stark open space. It is informally referred to that way as it's not named, so there's an opportunity there to name it. This exploration into what types of open space uses could happen on this smaller property launched a bigger effort, which is an International District Urban Agricultural Plan. And through it, the county is leading the effort to support and increase a range of existing and future urban agricultural activities within Albuquerque. And it's a very good connection to interest people in Albuquerque to then go out and visit our open spaces. And one last update, which you've also heard about recently, so I'll just mention this briefly. It's District 5, Phase 1 renovations for Carlitos Springs open space are set to be complete in 2020. And thank you for your support of $2 million to move forward with the next phase of renovations, which would be completed in 2021. And if you have not heard yet, I'll happily tell you that this historic site has been added to the state register, but it's also now in the National Register for Historic Places. So we are really happy about that.
I just have some.
Moving forward.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Just on the projects, and I was really pleased that the county did partner with the Agricultural Land Trust. This is a great way for us to leverage our money without having to actually go outright and do an outright purchase. And I'm assuming that we're going to attempt to do more of these because we're not responsible for the maintenance of this project or the property, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, that is correct.
Right. So all it is saying we're going to conserve it. It will be can only be used for agricultural use if it's sold, for example, correct?
Correct.
So we keep that arable property in because that's essentially what we want to do. But it also gives us the ability to put easements on top of properties for different uses without having to make the big investment. And of course, the issue, of course, is maintenance because that's future dollars. And the more we buy, the more we have to, take care of.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Just to close out, moving forward, as I mentioned, we have gone through the strategic planning process. And this is very important because really open space has been a program under Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, and it has really been formalized. And what it takes in order to move forward is to look at our programming, evaluate, do the planning, establish plans and put in place so that we ensure that we're responsible stewards and managers of these properties, responsible in delivering programs, but also responsible with the community's investments. So I'm very committed to doing that. In this process included various county staff and non-county partners. We looked at everything from staff capacity, inventory of our properties, and various resources that we have. And from this, what came out is that our main goals are to improve access to open space sites. And I thank you for being very active because you are out in the community and interesting people in coming to our properties. Of course, we want to expand educational opportunities and continue to be wise stewards of our natural resources. In the direction, so I will continue to ask for your help in this, is that open space must reinforce its organizational structure. It must increase funding for staff and programs and strengthen our partnerships. And that is really vital as a government agency, is to continue doing that. I think that makes us transparent and responsible to the entire community. So thank you for your support, and I hope that was very brief. And really the support of the community, as well, because these properties are significant to the identity of our community, both physically and culturally, as you have shared today. Thank you.
I have a question. So our very dynamic open space education leader recently moved over to the city. Is that helping to coordinate county activities with city open space?
Madam Chair, we do have those opportunities. We have been in conversation, but I think pushing forward that will be the case. In fact, we have a for sure partnership next year when we host the New Mexico Recreation and Parks Association conference here, and that'll be, the most upcoming partnership that we engage in with the city.
And in terms of programming, I know Bernalillo County has this amazing array of educational programs that people can tap into pretty much every weekend.
Absolutely.
Does the city have something equivalent?
Madam Chair, yes, the city has, for example, the City of Albuquerque Open Space Visitor Center, and I'd say our Gutierrez Hubble site and our Bukkake have similar kind of programming. So I think we're very compatible in that way.
Great. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you, Debbie Jo. That ends our meeting. Our next commission meeting will be Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. That'll be a zoning meeting at 2 p.m., followed by a Board of Finance meeting at 4:30, followed by the administrative meeting at 5. All of those here in the Vincent E. Griego chambers. And this meeting is adjourned.